you catch. It's not that hard, okay? All right, get the out of here.
I'm going to talk a lot about drills and fundamentals.
Watch it, watch it, watch it, watch it!
On 93.5
Watch it!
and 107.5.
Boom, baby!
The Fan.
Mark, did you get a good look on the way in at the skyline of Indianapolis?
I did. It was a nice break from what we've seen the last couple of days. So the severe storms that came through the area, hope everybody was safe and sound. But looks like we got some clear skies to clear the smog out of Indianapolis. Which
Yeah,
was nice to see.
I mean, we're back to normal, right? I don't mean that to sound in comparison to the last few days. Now, I have no idea what happens from here forward in terms of the smoke, the wildfires. Obviously, they didn't just go away in Canada, but the winds yesterday, the rain itself. A clear morning this morning on a Friday. Good morning to you, Jake Query, along with Mark Dykton. Sam Fritz is manning the controls for us here in the Hubler.com studios. As I'll tell you what, a busier day probably than we anticipated in terms of news today. Nothing earth-shattering. I mean, the Colts news finally came out, though. Mm-hmm. And color me skeptical here, okay? And I hate to be this guy, but I'm going to be this guy. They do this thorough investigation. We knew about Isaiah Rodgers because he basically had outed himself, which, I mean, kudos to him for stepping up and saying, like, look, I made a mistake. I have a hard time believing. I have to believe it. I get it. And it's a tough manner and a tough way to live to be a cynic about everything. I don't try to be that way. But, Mark, it seems odd to me that, especially before there was even total clarity on the NFL gambling rules in terms of the use of an app, and by that I mean, if you go into an NFL locker room and you walk around like during the week, Mondays and Wednesdays are when like the media availability is, when you can go around. I've done it for 20 years. Different franchises. I've covered different franchises. I covered the Rams. I covered the Colts. I remember one time when the Colts and Patriots were playing, Channel 6 sent me to Foxborough, and I was there for a week and did like the entire week of Patriots prep. So I was in the Patriots locker room. It's the same, all of them. You go in, and I mean, this is cool, but you know, the guys that are there, you get to go into the locker room and kind of get a glimpse of it on the days of media availability. And before they're gathering for their official team meetings, guys are kind of coming in and out, and it's like any other walk of life. Mm-hmm. There are certain guys that are sitting in their locker. Usually at least one locker has like a video game set up, and maybe a couple of guys are sitting around playing Xbox or something. Somebody usually has music going. You see guys that'll come in, they check their phone, or and then they go back out and they get treatment, whatever it might be. Oftentimes guys are just sitting in their folding chair in front of their locker like any of us, looking at their phone, texting somebody, checking social media, whatever it might be. The fact that in the National Football League, if guys were doing that and they were scrolling on their phone and they're like, oh, I'm going to go on one of the gambling apps, and I happen to be a native of San Diego and my Padres tonight are taking on the Giants, I'll put $50 on that. And that's a violation because they're inside the facility and they're using a gambling app, right?
Yeah.
We now know that that's been very clarified, and I assume that was very clarified to players beforehand, don't get me wrong. But to me, and I'm not here to belittle the significance, the issue, whatever it be, of gambling, but what I'm saying is, Mark, like, I do feel like putting $20 down on a Major League Baseball game, but doing it and having your phone recognize that from a GPS standpoint, you're inside of a team facility. That to an extent feels like going 45 and a 40, okay? You could probably pop 90% of the population for going 45 miles an hour down Capitol, okay? I'm not saying 90% of the league is doing it, but if they in fact just did like this thorough, exhaustive examination and study of the NFL to find guys that were doing this, and they only came up with like 3 or 4 players, one of them a practice squad player essentially for the Colts, the other a part-time starter, but that's it. I have a hard time believing that, and I'm not saying that again, I want to be very, very clear here. There are two ways to interpret into your ear canal what I'm saying. One of them is to say, well, Query is saying that Isaiah Rodgers, they shouldn't have done anything to him because everybody does it. The other way to interpret what I'm saying is, I agree with the penalties of the players that were penalized, but I am highly surprised they are the only 3 or I think it was 4 guys total out of the 1,400 in the National Football League that did this.
I feel like that's like when I go to my garage, I know when I open the door, I'm going to see a lot of stuff that I'm like, I got to clean this up. There's a lot of mess in here, and I don't want to open the garage door. I feel like that could be what the NFL is looking at when it comes to gambling is they've peeked in, but they haven't fully opened the door. And if they fully open the door, they're like, there's a lot more in here than I originally thought there was. And I think that's, like you said, the $20 bet on baseball, I think, yes, gambling on NFL games should be a 100% no-no. You do that, you're out of the league. But
I mean, Isaiah Rodgers, Mark, had to know that when you are placing a wager on the Indianapolis Colts, he knew that was a violation.
So for those who didn't hear, yes, Isaiah Rodgers and Rashad Berry of the Colts both suspended for at least next season for gambling on games. There was a quote in the ESPN article about the suspensions that Rodgers put upwards of 100 bets placed, including at least one wager involving the Colts. The bet was supposedly a $1,000 prop bet on the over-under on rushing yards by a Colts running back, which hit. It also says that he was encouraged by friends who lived in Florida, where legal sports betting is not available, to place wagers between the $25 and $50 range. So he definitely gambled on a Colts bet. And then Rashad Berry, we never really heard too much. I never even heard Rashad Berry's name mentioned this whole thing. It was always Isaiah Rodgers, but he was also pinched for that as well. But yeah, I think once you're in the league and you're gambling on NFL games, that's a 100% no-no. But I think with the gambling apps that the NFL is in bed with at this point, if a guy wants to wager a $10 bet on the Tampa Bay Rays to win the AL East, I really see no harm, no foul there. I mean, that's me personally. If they want to place a wager, whether it's at a team facility or not, and it's on a baseball game or a basketball game, I don't see the harm in that. So I do think they might need to reevaluate their rules here as far as the gambling goes. But I understand. It is a slippery slope, because if you open the gate to that,
that's it. That's it,
the problem.
I mean, that's the thing, right? Greg Rakestraw going to join us at 7:30 this morning. This will obviously be a topic of conversation over the course of the morning. Joel Erickson at 9 a.m. There's other news to talk about as well, but before we get to the other sports stories, your Bananas experience last night did not go off, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, you and I had very different Thursday night experiences. I was supposed to go to the Savannah Bananas game. Obviously, the weather played a huge role in that not happening. I figured it was going to be a bit of a delay because of the storms that were coming through the area. But then I got the alert that not only was the storms affecting it, but also that Victory Field had completely lost power, and so they weren't allowing anybody into the stadium. So gates were supposed to open, I think, at 5, and then they pushed it to 6. We didn't leave our house till like 6:45 because I'm like, there's no way this game is getting played, I don't think. But we should probably get down there just in case something miraculous happens. No sooner do we pull into the garage that we normally pull into for work, got the alert, game has been postponed till Saturday at noon. So the game will get made up on Saturday at noon. Gates open at 11. They are supposed to play what would have been their second game tonight. That game, I think, is still scheduled as I heard.
Are you going Saturday at noon?
We're going Saturday at noon, so it is a bit of a pain because we also have to get out of here and head to Illinois for a graduation party, and so we are going to pretty much go straight from the Savannah Bananas game and haul butt to Illinois to get to that. The good thing about Savannah Bananas games is there's a 2-hour time limit, so there's no way it's going longer than 2 hours. So if it starts at noon, it ends at 2. We gain an hour going back up to Illinois. We'll get some time back. So
when is the last time you spent a weekend in Indianapolis?
Quite a bit, actually. Last couple weekends. But it's
Really?
4th of July, and it's my brother's girlfriend got her master's degree, so we're going to go celebrate that.
Okay. But you are going Saturday, so you're going to sit in 90-degree heat instead of enjoying a nice 70-degree evening?
Yeah, probably. But my parents have a pool, so I'll probably jump in there, have some fun. let the girls see their grandparents.
But I'm talking about at the Bananas game.
Oh, the Bananas game? Yeah, I mean, hey, there's a beer bet with my name on it on Saturday afternoon.
Yesterday.
How was your evening, though, real quick?
Well, yesterday afternoon, by the way, was fabulous. Went to Patty's of Jamaica. It was awesome.
Is it Ryan was the guy that met you?
Correct. Well, Ryan, Glenn, my buddy Andy Goldman, Glenn Bill.
Oh, you guys had like a little party together.
Yeah. And then as I was afterwards, I was sitting there talking with my buddy Andy Goldman, who's a great dude. He's a former Hardwicks guy when I worked at Hardwicks. And another gentleman pulled up and was like, hey, man, I'm only here because I heard you talking about it. And we were already done. So then I felt bad, right? And I'm like, yeah, well, we already got done. So he's like, oh, I got some to go. And he texted me later and goes, man, you weren't kidding. Kyle was his name. Kyle's like, man, these things were awesome. So I'm like, hey, it's cool to meet Kyle, too. So it was fun to meet everybody. Then last night, Mark, you like Oasis, obviously, right?
Yes.
1 to 10
much.
scale, what is your level of fandom of Oasis?
Probably an 8.5, maybe 9.
It's funny. When I told people I was going to a concert and I said I'm going to see Noel Gallagher, what percent of people, when you say Noel Gallagher, realize who that is?
I mean, I would hope a pretty high percentage for those of us that grew up in the 90s, but I don't know.
So last night, and my cousin has like season tickets, if you will, to Ruoff. So thank you to my cousin Doug for giving me the tickets. But so we get there last night. Garbage was the opener, and then Noel Gallagher. Garbage started at 7:30. My cousin had the list at the times because I think they send that to you. Mm-hmm. So I knew that Noel Gallagher was going on at 9:30. I'm not a huge fan of Garbage. They're fine, whatever. But I'm like, okay, let's just leave at like 8:15, 8:30. So we get there, we park, we walk in the side thing, and there's a little bar restaurant area. And there's no one here. I mean, literally, like we walked into the bar area and there was no one. So we sit down and the waitress comes over. And I'm like, are you surprised by the crowd? Is it the weather? The smoke? Because there was some question whether or not this would even take place because Noel Gallagher canceled his concert on Wednesday, which I think was in Milwaukee. I don't know if he canceled it or like the group in Milwaukee canceled it. But at any rate, she says, and the waitress was probably my age, and she's like, well, I'm not sure who exactly is the guy playing tonight. And I'm like, well, it's Noel Gallagher. And she's like, I'm not as familiar with him. And I said, well, he's half of Oasis. She's like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? No. Oh, well, that's okay. So he now has his own band called Noel Gallagher and the Flying Birds, but he played a 14-song set. Songs 8 through 14 were all Oasis songs. So basically, he and Liam Gallagher hate each other, the two brothers. Uh-huh. I think this is well known. The songs that Liam wrote, he performs with when he's out touring. The songs that Noel Gallagher wrote, he performs. Now, so there were 3, like Shannon's not a huge fan, but she knew, she's like, oh, I know this song, that kind of thing. He literally came out, he did say, he's like, this is my first time in Hamilton, Indiana. It's like, well, it's Hamilton County, but okay. He didn't, he just basically came out and played. He talked a little bit, but then at the end, he literally was like, thank you so much for coming out and seeing us, and that was it. I'll bet there weren't 2,500 people there.
Wow.
But I talked to...
at Ruoff?
Yes.
Wow.
They didn't sell lawn seats, or if they did, they had everybody from the lawn move into the pavilion. So everybody was in the seats itself, and that was probably 60% full, and that was it. There were nobody in the lawn. Now, my buddy Charlie, who I've known for years that works out there, I ran into him last night, and he said, man, I studied abroad in England, and I saw Oasis at Wembley Stadium. And it was like, 4 nights in a row. And I'm like, that would still be the case. Like, if it was amazing to me that he would play at Ruoff in front of 2,500 people. Weather probably had something to do with that.
I would have to think so.
But if Oasis reunited and announced that they were playing a 4-night set in Wembley Stadium in London, it would sell out in like 12 minutes.
Well, I would say if Oasis reunited and they were willing to do U.S. touring, they would be headlining every Bonnaroo and, Lollapalooza and everything like that. They'd be headliners on every single one of those stops.
I'm probably a little bit biased because of my age range, but I feel like if Oasis reunited and toured the U.S., they would be playing at like FedEx Field and Soldier Field and Lucas Oil Stadium. Am I wrong?
I would kind of think that as well. So again, when you said 2,500, that's kind of shocking because even if the weather did play a role, 2,500 seems awfully low.
I mean, maybe I'm exaggerating how I don't know, it was pretty sparse.
But I mean, Oasis was one of the biggest bands of the 90s, and especially abroad, they were as well. I mean,
Sam, you're a music guy. You're a younger guy, so it's a little before your time, but you're in tune with music in general. If Oasis was reunited, now you're an anomaly because you're what, 20? How old are you?
28.
You're 28 going on 60, right? We've determined this.
Yes, I'm a famous 1974 radio DJ.
Correct. But amongst your peers, does anybody know who Oasis is?
Oh, yeah. No, Oasis is still huge. People my age, people younger than me, and some of it's probably just because they have a couple of hits that still manage to float around on alternative radio, pop radio. But I think we kind of forget that, Oasis was literally called the Beatles of the 90s. Like, they were supposed to be the second wave of the British invasion kind of feel. So I think Oasis selling out major stadium tour in the United States is a no-brainer if it's a full reunion. I kind of think they're like the Guns N' Roses of their era in terms of what a reunion would mean, right? Guns N' Roses got back together, full band, sells out, third largest tour of all time when they reunite. Same thing would happen with Oasis.
By the way, I'd like to say good morning to my buddy Derek, who's listening in Barcelona, Spain. Derek, Barcelona's the best, man. I was there. You've got to do the Sagrada Familia, and you've got to go down on the Mediterranean. I'll actually text it to him, but there's a little like bar cabana area on the beach that's fabulous. Have you been to Barcelona, Mark?
No, would love to go. Never left the continent yet. Been to Mexico, been to Canada, haven't left the continent.
I mean, the only problem with it is, and I don't want to pretend like I'm some world traveler. I'm not. I've been to Europe twice. But there is something about, like, when you're flying, and then you realize you're like, oh, my gosh, like, we're over nothing but water for, like, 6 hours. It's a little disconcerting,
yeah,
right?
When you're looking at, like, oh, I see why they do the flotation device seminar before we take off.
Correct. A little different than when you fly from here to Kansas City. Did you, how about James Harden? $36.5 million?
Yeah.
I don't blame him for opting in, but I have a theory on this that I think is an unpopular opinion. There are 3 players. We'll do this in trivia form for the two of you.
Sure.
There are 3 players in the NBA that, in my very humble opinion, people go gaga over, and now it's become an annual thing of, like, which team is going to pick them up as their final piece that's going to push them to a title. And I'm like, yeah, I would not. You do not get return on investment for the amount of money you have to pay for said player, period.
You want like 3 guesses?
Yes.
James Harden.
I mean, Harden's one, obviously.
Chris Paul.
And I think Harden last year, Harden had a wonderful season, and he was, I think James Harden, we think because he was such a high-flying scorer for so long that's all he does. He was a really good distributor last year. I thought he was very unselfish for Philadelphia last year.
I'm going to say James Harden, Chris Paul, and Russell Westbrook.
You are, well, Westbrook is totally in this discussion as well, but that's not who I was thinking of. Chris Paul, yes. Sam?
Kyrie Irving.
Kyrie Irving's the other one. Yep.
Yep.
I mean, and Irving, I realize probably is the reason that Cleveland won that title, but at what point are you like, yeah, man, 1 year rental for $40 million to load manage and get disappointed in the playoffs? I don't need it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I saw the other thing, NBA thing that perked my ears up is apparently the Pacers' top free agent target is off the board already, and free agency hasn't
that was big
yet.
news. Harrison Barnes yesterday, 3 years. What did I see? 3 years,
$54 million.
$54 million to stay in Sacramento, and so that probably turns up the wick a little bit, to use a racing term, on the Pacers' pursuit of Max Strus, who Scott Agnes is one that's reported, I believe, that Max Strus of Miami is Max Strus of Miami is now like a target for the Pacers. He's an outside shooter. Another one, like a former, undrafted player that has really blossomed in Miami. The Pacers have gone that route before. Chris Copeland comes to mind, like guys that then they come here and you're like, ooh, wait a minute, that was pretty circumstantial where they were before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
By the way, somebody just texted this to us, to you and I, Mark. I'm Jake's age. I have no clue who Oasis is. How is that possible?
You've definitely heard Champagne Supernova or Wonderwall. 100%.
Don't Look Back in Anger?
Yeah. Live Forever.
Rock and Roll Star.
Yeah.
Champagne Supernova in general.
Yeah. There's no way. I think that text might be BS if you ask me.
Well, you're included on it, and they have your number too.
Oh, I didn't check my phone yet. But we're off and running on a Friday. We've got a long holiday weekend upcoming. Hopefully you're safe and sound. I know there's a lot of power outages still across central Indiana, so hopefully your family's safe and sound. You don't have too many trees or branches to clean up in your yard. But join us on this Friday. We'll get you set for the 4th of July weekend. Greg Rakestraw joins us at 7:30, and we've got Joel Erickson joining us at 9. You're listening to Kevin and Query.
One.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Rough night for the Indiana Fever last night as they fall to the Phoenix Mercury 85-63. They got whooped. 3-game losing streak to wrap up their 3-game road trip. They've lost 4 out of 5. Not a great start. They'll get back at it Sunday when they host the Chicago Sky at 4 p.m.
Speaking of Chicago, by the way, street race for NASCAR this weekend in Chicago. Now, Mark, you are a Chicago native, and I don't know the answer. Do you think people in Chicago are fascinated and intrigued by this or annoyed by the interruption of daily travel?
The latter, by far. It's like a 2.2 mile course, and yeah, people are annoyed that they're like, what do you mean I can't get to work this way? I have to go. It's been like a multi-week inconvenience. So yeah, they're like, get this out of here.
You really think so?
I know so. Yeah, I've seen people who are complaining about their commute has been completely disrupted for this race that no one is interested in Chicago. I think it'll draw pretty interesting numbers because I'm fascinated to see what the aerial views are going to be. That should be pretty interesting TV. I don't know how many people are actually interested in it locally.
I'm curious about it because I wonder how much, like IndyCar, obviously with streetcar, I have always felt with a street course for IndyCar, there are a couple of cities that I have always been intrigued with IndyCar trying to do a street course race. Chicago isn't necessarily one of them.
I'm curious to see if they've
that
patched all the potholes. What if like Chase Elliott hits a pothole?
Well, right on.
I would hope so.
Hey, smoothed it all out, right?
I would hope so. If NASCAR came to town and they fixed all the potholes, maybe Chicago will be more open to it.
Fair enough. Major League Baseball yesterday. Speaking of Chicago, Cubs losers to the Phillies 3-1. It was the Pirates 5-4 over the Padres. Brewers over the Mets, Dodgers over the Rockies, Kansas City, the White Sox, the Tigers, and the Yankees, all winners as well. The Yankees 10-4 winners over the Oakland Athletics. Astros over the Cardinals in interleague play 11-4. It was the Rays
14-0.
What'd I say?
11-4.
Where did I get that?
I don't know.
Yeah, 14-0 Astros over the Cardinals. That's weird. Rays over the Diamondbacks 6-1. Sorry that you're...
Every time they're on the doorstep of catching your Orioles, my Diamondbacks hit a snag.
That's the way it works in our race for PBR. Marlins over the Red Sox, Blue Jays over the Giants, and the Indianapolis Indians 9-8 winners over the Louisville Bats. Again, that game in Louisville, but Victory Field yesterday out of commission due to the storms, so the Savannah Bananas game did not take place. In the association, talking about the NBA, Harrison Barnes re-signs with Sacramento. That is one of the targets, as we talked about, for the Pacers that is now off the board. Additionally, James Harden opting in at over $36 million a year this year. Who would not opt in for that? But the Sixers have said, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that we are going to retain him. So Philadelphia now looking to perhaps move James Harden. Early word is that they will try to facilitate something that lands him in Los Angeles with the Clippers to pair with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. So basically out west, you would have the power team, if you will, of the Clippers against the power team, if you will, of the Suns, and then the Denver Nuggets, who are homegrown, just beating both of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Sounds about right.
That's the way it works.
So we'll see what happens. NBA free agency officially starts today at 6 p.m. Swoosh.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
Anything else we need to swoosh to?
Nah, Greg Rakestraw, he's coming up next. We can talk a little Colts suspensions with him and what's next for both guys and all that stuff. So
the Colts news yesterday amongst the NFL, what became official what we have known for a while. Isaiah Rodgers now, and I want to elaborate on, and we'll get into this with Greg when he joins us next, the terms of the suspension for Isaiah Rodgers. A little bit different than I think what was anticipated, but not surprising based on precedent. We'll explain that and get into more with Greg, and we'll do it on the other side. You're listening to Kevin and Query, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
107.5 The Fan.
Okay, so I'm going to make an executive decision here. And I mean this not in a snarky way at all. For the next few bump backs, Sam, we're going to play Oasis songs. And I want it like the big ones. Champagne Supernova, Wonderwall. Because I do, and I get it. There are people that are like, I've never heard of them. Now, I have a hard time believing if you were alive in the mid-'90s. And I get saying, like, you've never heard them.
You might not be familiar with their songs.
Like, I'm not a country music fan, so I couldn't tell you a song from Dierks Bentley, but I absolutely know the name Dierks Bentley. Mm-hmm. I know who, Florida Georgia Line. I mean, I know those acts, right?
Right.
Oasis was so ubiquitous in the pop culture news stream of the mid-'90s, just in terms of, I mean, everything from declaring that they're bigger than the Beatles to, like, fighting on stage to... I don't know. They just, maybe I'm a little bit biased because I was in my mid-20s at the time. But I do feel like Wonderwall and Champagne Supernova in general, those two songs, and I totally get it. People are like, I've never heard them. And then you hear the song and you're like, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah. The same is true of Led Zeppelin. Like, there are Zeppelin songs that you would say to somebody like, do you know Dire Maker? And they're like, I've never heard of that song. And then you play it and you're like, oh, well, yeah, I just didn't know that was the name of the song. Mm-hmm. But anyway, great show last night, but I do realize Noel Gallagher, I'm fascinated by it because nobody was there, and I think most people didn't realize, oh, that's who that is.
Yeah. Well, let's ask our first guest of the day. I'm sure he's very familiar with Oasis.
Joining us now on the Payless Siggers Hotline, of course, you hear him on this radio station amongst a gabillion different media outlets in terms of play-by-play for various sports throughout the state. Greg Rakestraw joins us. Greg, your favorite Oasis song would be what?
Wonderwall.
Okay. And how many, if you had to, on a 1 to 10 scale, 10 being the most, 1 being the least, your level of fandom of Oasis was what?
Probably a 6.
Okay, so you could probably name off the top, I mean, I'm not asking you to do so right now, but what would you say the average person could name? 4 to 6 songs?
I'd say the average person could name 2 to 3. 4 to 6 might be a little bit much.
I guess I should rephrase that. The average person, if you played for them the songs and had to say you have or have not heard this before, that would probably be what, 4 to 6?
In that neighborhood, yeah.
Okay. You are up bright and early on a Friday, man. Is that because you wanted to actually see the skyline since we haven't seen it the last 2 days?
It was certainly noticeable after the storms that knocked down tree limbs. Thankfully, not at my house, but knocked out power at my house for about 4 hours or so last night and yesterday afternoon. But no, I had an 8 o'clock appointment, but you can probably hear it in my voice. I started feeling a little bit under the weather last night. I am feeling much better this morning, but out of an abundance of caution, I think I'm going to kind of ease into my day and make my first thing a new lunch in terms of being out in the world this morning.
Okay, let's begin with this. The Colts news. I will interject my opinion in a second, but first and foremost, just your overall reaction to yesterday becoming official what we all knew was coming, and that was that Isaiah Rodgers would indeed be suspended, but instead of 1 year, it is quote-unquote indefinite. Your thoughts? And there was a second player that admittedly in Rashad Berry that I was relatively unfamiliar with, I think we all were, that was also caught up in this, but your overall thoughts?
Not surprising. And again, it was just a matter of when, not if. And so the team then elected to say, hey, we're going to just go ahead and cut ties immediately, which more or less was going to happen. Any player like a Rashad Berry was on a 1 year deal, so if he's suspended indefinitely, then he's not going to be back. And Isaiah Rodgers, we all knew he was at the end of his contract. And so the Colts elected to kind of make the statement of saying, hey, we're not going to tolerate this. We want no part of this, and moving on. So, again, this kind of happened when I was doing the midday show yesterday. I think I phrased it this way. It's breaking news, but it's not. We all knew it was going to happen. It's a matter of when. Here's the win, and Isaiah Rodgers is no longer a member of the Indianapolis Colts.
Greg, do you think either of these guys recover from this and have any sort of NFL career after this, or are they going to kind of be synonymous with the gambling suspensions in the NFL?
Barry was a guy that was a journeyman. I mean, he was literally here for a week last year and just happened to be on the roster to start this season. I would say that's probably it for him, and that's not in a punitive manner. That is simply in the matter of hey, if you're a fringe roster guy and, you're going to miss a year, that's it. Somebody else will kind of come in and 38 somebody will come in and take your spot. For Rodgers, if he can kind of clean things up, he was good enough to be not only a roster player but a starter for this team. I think he will get an opportunity as long as he never gambles on the National Football League ever again. I do think he's got a chance to play someplace else. I don't think that'll be here, but I think, again, is he an all-pro, Pro Bowl level player? Probably not. But is he a starting level player? Is a pretty talented kick returner? Yes. And do I think that means if he can kind of stay clean that he'll get a chance someplace else down the line? I honestly do.
Here's the thing, Greg, and with Isaiah Rodgers, when this came out, what we kept hearing was, he's going to be suspended for a year. And I was saying yesterday, if part of this includes wagers on his own team, zero chance he's going to be limited to 1 year. And then it comes out as quote-unquote indefinite.
Right.
I'll bet you he never plays another game in the league.
It's possible.
Because of that.
Possible,
that's the one that does him in.
In terms of sheer talent, he would get another look if he gets reinstated to the National Football League.
No, I get that. But the other thing that comes into play, Greg, is I don't think people realize the level of physical conditioning and just overall athleticism to play in the National Football League that sets you apart. I mean, you're talking about the top 0.1% of physical athletes in sports.
Sure.
And you take a year off from that. I think it is really difficult once you fall out of rhythm to maintain that level of fitness and athleticism because there is such a fine line.
You can't replicate it. You can train, you can keep yourself in shape, but you're not going to find 25 other dudes to replicate what a football practice is like. So you're absolutely right, and it's not like there is some league that would allow him to join because of this suspension. He's not going to go play in the CFL. I don't think the XFL or USFL will say, "Hey, why don't you come this way?" No, this is a scarlet letter. You're not playing anybody's league, anytime soon.
I think the scarlet letter is a good way of saying it. I do feel like, Greg, I said this earlier, and it's not an easy way to live to be cynical about everything, okay? It's not. But that's by nature how I am about a lot of things, and this is one of them. It's hard for me. I don't know the scope of this NFL investigation. So if you had to guess, Greg, would you say that, like, when this came out, when we heard that a player within the Colts organization was being investigated for gambling as part of an NFL probe, do you believe this was an NFL-wide probe that happened to pop Isaiah Rodgers? Or, in other words, let's go back to one of my bad analogies, Greg. Greg Rakestraw joins us on the Payless Sickers hotline. There are two ways that someone can get caught for driving while impaired. The first is that they happen to be driving home when the police have an operation set up where they're pulling over every third car and testing everyone. Sure. The other is someone's driving erratically, someone calls and says, this guy looks like he might be impaired, and that guy gets pulled over. Which was this? Was the NFL doing a probe in general of overlooking things and discovered this? Or did they get alert of something going on and therefore honed in on it?
That could be both. I am sure there is a tracking mechanism because of, the thing that I am, holding in my hand and talking to you on now acts as a locator for me. When I do something, there are those that know where I'm going to do that from. So I am sure that there is an NFL program, a tracking system. When a wager is placed on a mobile phone from at an NFL facility, that sets something in motion, I would think would be issue number one. But at the same time, let's look at kind of yesterday's story that was reported. I think I saw it first from the Action Network, that it's been reported that most of the bets are $25 and $50 bets. But there was a $1,000 bet that was a play on an over-under in a Colts game in which Isaiah Rodgers won, or whoever was betting for Isaiah, whatever the account name that he was betting under. And I guarantee you, even though that's still a relatively small wager, in comparison to the other wagers he had been making, I guarantee you that tripped a radar as well. So I think the answer to your question in this case, Jake, is both of those things.
Yeah, I just that's the big one. I can't get past and I get it, Greg, as I mentioned earlier. You could probably, if you're the NFL, in terms of guys sitting around bored in the locker room during free time, and there's plenty of that, quite frankly. We see plenty of guys sitting there listening to music or playing cornhole in the locker room. I mean, it's fun, right? And I get it. But we see a lot. How often, Greg, have you walked into a locker room, and NBA, NFL, whatever it might be, and guys are sitting in their folding chair at their locker looking at their phone? I mean, they're texting, but they're just like any of us, right? I have a hard time believing, Greg, that before, I think now it's very definitive. But 6 months ago, and I realize to the players, they probably were told this repeatedly, but I have a hard time believing that when it comes to placing a $15 wager on the Padres-Rockies game, that only 4 guys in the National Football League did that from inside a team facility in the last year.
That's a fair point. And what I would say to that is this. I would think that this story will get everybody's attention for a while. But a couple of months down the road, a few weeks down the road, this is going to happen again. Mm-hmm. And again, the place where these guys really will get educated on this is in the off-season team activities, especially the rookies when they first get, to their respective teams. There is so much in terms of rookie symposiums and things like that, where so much is thrown at these guys. This will be part of it. This will now be an annual refresher course, but I guarantee you somebody else will get popped for this at some point in time during the course of the year, because it's first and foremost in your mind now, but it'll quickly fade to the back for some players. So we're going to keep, just because of the prevalence of gambling, not because of sponsorships in the National Football League, but because of the relative ease in which anybody can place a wager these days. I guarantee you this story will repeat itself, whether it's at some point in time during the regular season or at some point in time during the offseason next year.
Is it going to come to a point where the NFL has to reevaluate their gambling policies? Or like, okay, 100% you cannot gamble on NFL games, but MLB, NBA, okay, we'll let you do that. Is it going to come to that?
Slippery slope.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
Exactly. I think they're going to. I saw this PR list yesterday. Basically it was 6 pretty simple rules. I mean, these are not paragraph treaties. These were like sentences. Don't ever wager on the National Football League. Don't wager from the facility. I think it's pretty cut and dry. They'll simply say if you're in the employ of a National Football League team, you cannot wager at the facility. Period. End of sentence. And that's where they're going to leave it.
The Greg. To me, with this, I go back to, and I get it. I'm not saying they're wrong. The NFL, of any sports league, Greg, there is none that is smarter about their marketing, their imagery, than the National Football League. And when they say that they want to uphold the integrity of the game, they're not stupid. They know what drives the interest in games for a lot of people. And what they want to make emphatically clear is they want to uphold the integrity of your wager on their games. And I get it.
Correct.
I get it.
And Jake, let's face it, that has been the case before gambling sponsorships were prevalent.
1,000 million %, Greg. 1,000 million %.
Why do we have injury reports every week and have had them for 20, 25 years or longer? That's kind of been the tacit nod to this dating back to the last millennium. So that's been the case for a long time, Jake.
I mean, Greg, my dad and I, it's funny. My dad and I were talking about this. My dad has a lot of reservation and hesitation about gambling, which he's never had a problem with it. I'm not saying that, but he just, I think it's just always rubbed him the wrong way, and that was kind of instilled in me actually at a young age. So I totally get it. But I told my dad, I said, Dad, when I was 7 years old, how did I become familiar with the National Football League? Because what would we do every week together? And what we did and how I became familiar with teams in the NFL was my dad would pick up the sports page, and in the back it had the latest line, and he would read to me, okay, Green Bay at Tampa Bay. And I'd be like, oh, 7 points. And we would see what the line was. I don't know that I knew at that age that it was about gambling, but my point being, just because gambling has only recently been legalized does not mean that it has not been ubiquitous in the NFL culture.
Absolutely. No doubt. No doubt about that whatsoever.
Greg, I want to pivot to Pacers free agency targets. We saw that Harrison Barnes is going to stick with the Sacramento Kings, 3 years, $54 million. I think a lot of people had him as a possible top free agent target for the Pacers. Is there anyone on the free agent market that you like that you could see could be a fit for the Pacers?
Yeah, I thought Barnes was that guy. And now I kind of wonder, does this push the Pacers back into the trade market? Because I thought Barnes was really a good fit. And the guy that I likened it to yesterday on the show, even though the game is played differently, their games are different. But I'm like, that might be almost like a David West signing. A guy that's a veteran player. You bring him on a couple-year deal. You think he's the final piece that kind of elevates you. Well, clearly, that's not going to happen now. He's going to stick in Sacramento. And they've got a good thing going in Sacramento there, too. So now you kind of think, okay, does this maybe force your hand in terms of trying to trade for and extend a player like OG Anunoby? If the 7th pick was too rich for your blood, or the Raptors wanted more, I'm not sure that a couple of draft picks can be between 15 and 20, which I think the Pacers are going to have next year. I'm not sure if that and kind of spare pieces, would be enough, to bring in a player like Anunoby. So I think it's honestly a little bit of a reset for the Pacers, knowing they kind of have such of a one specific need, and that is a guy that can, it's really kind of a glorified 3, but really a guy that would play that stretch 4 these days in the NBA. That's the specific type of player they are looking at. Because, again, they've got so many pieces already under contract, they kind of need a little more depth at that spot. That's what the Pacers are looking
Greg, the thing with me, Max Strus is one whose name has been floated around. And he's been a good player for Miami. Not a great player, but he's been a nice player and a good story. An undrafted player, really good shooter, which probably the Pacers need a little bit. But I think they should learn from the ghost of Chris Copeland. There is a danger in overpaying for a guy that was a situational, really good player elsewhere. And Miami has a track record of situational guys that their system makes guys really good players. That does not mean that they are really good players in every system. Does that make sense?
Right. Agreed. And Strus is not a guy that, to me, moves the needle greatly because I think he fits more in that 2-3 range than, say, that power forward 4.
NBA free agency starts today at 6. Not ideal that the Pacers might be heading back to the drawing board before it even officially starts, but that's where we're at right now. Greg, last one from me. I don't know where this holiday weekend falls on your holiday power rankings. What's your favorite part of 4th of July?
Family get-togethers, I guess, and I say that like very unconvincingly. I guess because I look at everything through the prism of sports. 4th of July has never been that. I mean, the Declaration of Independence, American independence, is a great thing. But in terms of like the party, I'm kind of like, there's 4th of July is not a great sports holiday. I'm not a big fireworks guy, so I appreciate the day off. Usually, like my tradition is to get around to golf in, which I'll be doing that on Tuesday. But other than that, it's probably pretty far down the holiday depth chart. What about you guys?
Okay, here's the thing, Greg. The holiday depth chart. Christmas, I think, for most people is clearly number 1, right?
Yep.
So 2 and 3. Is Thanksgiving your number 2?
Thanksgiving is a number 2. Labor Day is probably number 3.
Really?
Just because in my world, I know I get a couple 3 days off before the grind of the football season really gets underway. So I'm a big Labor Day person. Obviously, Memorial Day is very important, but also because of where we live, it's kind of a big stinking deal. So that's part of what pushes the 4th of July even further down the depth chart.
Okay, if you were to poll Americans, What's the least popular holiday? I mean, obviously like Arbor Day or Flag Day, but of the actual holidays, and this isn't one that you get off work, I guess. But I think most people, if you put them on a lie detector test, would tell you that I'm not saying they dislike it, but I think most people would find Valentine's Day to be the one that's the most eye roll.
Well, see, I don't consider Valentine's Day a holiday.
Yeah, it's not a federal holiday. I get it.
Right. Like if we were going with the cranberry sauce of Thanksgiving dinner of holidays, I would think Columbus Day, because people do get that day off. That some people get that day off. That would be the day, or President's Day would probably be the day that would get selected, because again, that is a federal holiday for most.
See, I'm going to probably upset some people. I would say Easter Sunday, because you usually don't get the Friday before or the Monday off. So you just have the get-together on Sunday, and then you're back at it. You're like, oh, okay, there's a holiday in there.
I mean, there's
but I didn't
nothing
even
worse
enjoy a
than
day off.
this year when Christmas fell on – wasn't Christmas on a Sunday?
Oh, that stunk. Yeah.
Or was it on – and it's just like, oh, my gosh, like you basically got no time off. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a buzzkill, right? But all right, well, Greg, enjoy your just pretend it's Labor Day, right? And then you'll enjoy it more, right?
Exactly.
Enjoy your Independence Day. Always a pleasure, Greg. We'll talk to you soon, all right?
Thanks, fellas.
All right, Greg Rakestraw, the
straight on the golf
Hotline.
course. Yeah.
You know, I have thoughts on Independence Day.
Okay.
Probably unpopular ones.
All right. Well, we can get in your unpopular opinions on the other side of the break.
Joel A. Erickson joins us in an hour. You're listening to a Friday edition. Happy Friday to you in just before kind of the long weekend for a lot of people. It's Kevin and Query here, 93.5, 107.5 The Fan.
from the DriveHubler.com studios, this is 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
WIBC HD2, HD3, Indianapolis. The Braves are in Cleveland to take on the Guardians. Tuesday evening at 6:30 on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
So I only said that we will, and thank you, Sam, for playing this, play the Oasis songs because, and I get it. Let that go a little bit so people can hear it. Last night I went to see Noel Gallagher at Ruoff, and I think that the weather was a factor. They only sold, like, somebody told me 4,000 tickets. I heard like the sales were a complete flop. And I think a lot of that is because Noel Gallagher's a pretty polarizing guy, obviously. I mean, he's kind of a jerk. But I don't know that people realize that it's one of the two members of Oasis. And when I mentioned that earlier, people were like, I don't know anything about Oasis. They sold 70 million albums in a 4-year stretch from 1995 to 99, I looked up. Mm-hmm. So they were massive. They were a huge band. And I think and I get it. I think there are a lot of people that are like, I don't recognize the name of the band, but then you hear the songs like that one. I think most people will be like, okay, I have heard that before.
Yeah. Even if you're walking in like a supermarket or whatever, you had to have heard that song, I would imagine.
Or Wonderwall,
yeah.
Which we'll play also. Mm-hmm. Good morning to you on a Friday, by the way. The 4th of July coming up, Independence Day, obviously, the holiday itself. That is on Tuesday. Is that correct?
Correct.
So we will not be doing a show on Monday or Tuesday. Our place of employment has been kind enough to give us both days off. So we will resume on Wednesday. So for those of you who are making plans, traveling, whatever it may be, if you are also getting Monday off, get ready to enjoy a long weekend. Hopefully the weather cooperates. In terms of Independence Day and the 4th of July holiday, here is my thought on that. And let me state my opinion, and then you tell me, Mark Dykton, if you think that I'm off base.
Sure.
Okay? I loved, when I was a kid, the 4th of July was always a special holiday because I loved going downtown for the fireworks celebration. Mm-hmm. I was always kind of captivated by it. Nothing beats the year San Diego. Do you remember that, like 10 years ago? The city of San Diego when they did their firework display.
And they all went off simultaneously?
Yes. Somehow they had some mishap.
Yeah.
And they all went off at the same time. It's like, oh my gosh.
That was a hell of a 30 seconds.
No doubt. But the grand finale and the music, I loved it. And I remember as a kid with my parents driving downtown. And in those days, you would drive to Florida and you would pass Sad Sam's fireworks, but fireworks for the most part, most of them were outlawed in the state of Indiana. So it was like this big treat, right? You could always buy bottle rockets and like little whippersnappers, but in terms of the big ones that like, some jackass will blow his hand off, that kind of thing,
yeah.
you couldn't get them. My only thing with this is going to be a hot take that people are going to kill me for, but there are going to be a percentage of people that hear what I'm about to say that go, amen, okay? I love the United States. I love what it stands for. I love everything about it. Who doesn't, right? And I am absolutely proud to be an American citizen. I think I told you this year, for the first year, during taps at the Indianapolis 500, I actually welled up. My buddy Michael from Australia was with me up there in the perch, and he's like, man, the hair on my arms stood up, but part of it was because I looked over and saw what that moment means to you. So don't come at me and say I'm not patriotic, right? I love the United States, and I love everything about what it represents.
I'm waiting for the but.
Somehow, maybe I don't know why it is, but it seems to me that somehow in the last 10 years or so, maybe the movie Joe Dirt had something to do with it, I don't know. There became almost a mockery of patriotism. Like, it became patriotism in this country to a lot of people became not about exhibiting how much they love the United States, but almost making sport of going overboard intentionally by wearing American flag denim cutoff jeans and dressing yourself like the flag and yelling out America and acting almost like you are mocking patriotism. Mm-hmm. And that always bothered me a little bit. I'm like, I don't think that that's as cool as people think. And I love the community aspect of gathering to celebrate our independence, albeit small town parades. We went to the Greensburg parade when I was a kid. I loved it. Kids waving the flag. I loved all of that. What I don't love, so here is your but, is I loved the community coming together collectively to watch a community-based fireworks show that encompassed the celebration for everybody in one fell swoop. I totally understand that people like to sit in their backyard with their kids or in the cul-de-sac and let off fireworks. I get it. The people that decide, though, in the neighborhood until 1 o'clock in the morning to set off their own. There is a neighbor of Shannon's who lets off, like, you know, the aerial, what's it called, a mortar bomb?
Yeah.
There is a neighbor of Shannon's. I'm talking like the type that the Speedway uses at 6 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
A neighbor of Shannon's does that starting, 2 days ago until probably July 8th, multiple times a night. And I'm talking like rattling the windows and setting off car alarms in the neighborhood, and like people on Facebook saying, like, listen, we get it. If you want to celebrate the 4th on the 3rd or the 4th, that's fine. But have a little decorum here. And then the response, of course, is, I guess you hate America. Just don't be a jackass, right?
Yeah. No, I agree.
Have a little consideration for other people. So what I'm getting at is I love Independence Day, but I hate the people. Hate is a wrong word. I get annoyed by the people that take it to an extreme abundance, all almost for the mere sake of trying to create reason to be able to then say to people, I just love this country more than you do. Obviously, get over it.
Yeah, when it's 2 a.m, you're trying to get some sleep and you're kaboom. You're like, all right, like, enough. I mean, put them away for the night, guy.
It's amazing. I just don't remember. Okay, you go out at 9 or 10 o'clock at night on July 4th, and it sounds like a war zone. Fine. That's cool. I get it. What I don't like is people that totally attack you for just being like, okay, it's July 6th. We're good now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I guess you're just okay. Like, have some level of decency about it.
Well, especially as a former dog owner, like, my dog hated 4th of July. And I know a lot of dogs do hate 4th of July, and with great reason. But yeah, when you're hitting them at 2 a.m, like, all right, my dog's already scared and like peed on the rug. Like, I don't need to keep doing this till 3 a.m. and beyond July 4th. Like, wrap it up. You want to set a couple off on July 5th? Fine. But a week later, 2 weeks before, let's pump the brakes just a little bit.
I think that they would. I think people that do that would be surprised to realize that not as many of their neighbors think they're as cool as they think. Right?
Yeah.
I totally get. I mean, you want to set up a couple spinners in the driveway for the kids, or a couple. That's cool.
Yeah.
But like
save the other ones, save the big ones for next year.
The 2-hour like deal until it's like, come on, man.
Yeah. No, I'm there with you on that one.
My buddy Dewey sends me this. I love the fact that they're doing a street race in Chicago, just not necessarily for NASCAR. Let me read you an article from WGN, okay? I'm reading verbatim here from WGNTV.com. Kyle Busch is no Taylor Swift. While the singing sensation is credited with helping fill 97% of Chicago hotel rooms during her June concerts at Soldier Field, there are plenty of rooms available at relatively low prices during this weekend's NASCAR race. The Hilton Chicago, which overlooks the race route in Grant Park. Do you go route or route?
Route.
Okay. Has rooms available for $278 per night this weekend. The high-end JW Marriott in the Loop is offering rooms at $365 per night, and the swanky Four Seasons is offering accommodations for $700. None of the prices are off the charts for a Chicago summer weekend.
Taylor Swift hotel stays when she was in Chicago were going for $2,300.
Seriously?
Mm-hmm.
The Taylor Swift thing,
and you had to get three. You had to buy 3 nights worth.
Taylor Swift to me, I mean, it is fascinating. I mean, she must be an unbelievable performer. She's clearly right now the biggest performer in the world. The fact that she plays 4 straight nights at Jerry World in Dallas and sells it out. And I will say this for Taylor Swift. And I'm going to now be the person talking about when I said Oasis, people like I don't know that I can name a Taylor Swift song. I'm sure if I heard some of them, I'd be like, oh yeah, I get it. But I don't know anybody who has gone to see her that has not said she's an unbelievable performer. I mean, I know people who have gone to take their daughter there, and they're like, oh my gosh, she is worth every penny because she is amazing.
Yeah, she came to Indy, I don't know how long ago. It was 5 years ago or something. She sold out Lucas Oil Stadium. I was intrigued to go. And Ashley's like, I don't know, and this and that. And I was like, shit, heck, I'd like to go.
Did you just swear?
No, I said shoot. I'd like to go.
I don't know about that. Sam, you got your finger on the dub button over there? Sam Fritz just woke up.
I would like to go. I thought she's a very good talent and all that stuff. I think she's like, oh, you just think she's cute. I'm like, she's not ugly, but I also enjoy her. I enjoy her songs. I think she's got a great music. And again, like you said, I've never heard a single person say that she's put on a bad concert. I've not heard one person that paid whatever the tickets are going for, that she's not lived up to the expectations.
So back to the Taylor Swift selling out Chicago like nobody's business and NASCAR struggling to do so. I am curious to see how it goes with a street race in Chicago with NASCAR. It's kind of a collision of culture to an extent. I get why NASCAR's doing it. They're trying to, NASCAR has run obviously in Chicagoland for years, but a street course race is different. There are areas that I think there are certain cities, like for IndyCar, to do a street race. And for those that don't know, let me explain the difference because I realize not everybody listening is a diehard race fan. Street course and road course, 2 different things. Both of them involve left and right-handed turns. Both of them are usually multi-mile long circuits. A road course is a permanent facility. Watkins Glen is a road course. Sonoma is a road course. Barber is a road course. A street course is a temporary facility that utilizes city streets. One of the real challenges of a street course is you don't realize this when you're driving, but all roads have a bit of a crown in them for water runoff purposes. When you are driving a car, in particular from an IndyCar standpoint, that's 20 inches off the ground, and you're doing so at a high rate of speed, it disrupts the balance of your car a little bit, and it's very challenging. I have always felt like IndyCar, from a street course standpoint, should try to do, I've always thought it would be a natural to do a doubleheader and call it like the Twin Duels or whatever in the Twin Cities. Because in the Great Plains, the Dakotas, Nebraska, Minnesota, racing is really, really, really popular. And I think it would work there.
Can I ask you because I don't know about this NASCAR, but with the race course, are they still doing stages, or is that just for lap course? Like are they just doing that for circuits? Yeah.
That is actually an excellent question.
Because that's where NASCAR's kind of lost me, is the confusion of the stages and all this stuff.
They do stages.
They've gotten way too complicated.
Well, they do stages here on the road course at Indianapolis. So I would imagine they must do the stage racing as well on the street course.
That's where NASCAR's kind of lost me, where they're overcomplicating it. Instead of just like, okay, whoever is leading the final lap is the winner. Now it's like stages and points and all. It's like, okay, all right.
I think you're
starting to lose me.
I think there are a lot of people that probably would agree with you on that.
Yeah, and I'm a very casual NASCAR fan, so you're not hitting the
I think the danger or the balance that NASCAR probably needs to grab, and IndyCar as well. Racing is a niche sport. And I think that when you are a niche sport, it's important to slowly introduce yourself to people instead of, like, I've always said, you can't teach somebody algebra who doesn't know how to do long division. So you have to do the basic steps first and then get people hooked. So, yes, you have to kind of keep it simple, admittedly, right? Mm-hmm. But I'll be curious to see how it does go this weekend.
Visually on TV, I think it's going to be pretty cool. Be cool. I'm curious to see what kind of turnout there is fan-wise.
No stage racing for road and street courses this year. Thank you. Somebody just pointed that out.
Well, thank you because I have no idea. Who do you want? Let's go to
Dave, 239-1070. Dave joins us on the program. Dave, what's up? Good morning.
Hey, good morning. How you guys doing this morning?
Hanging. Now, Dave, are you on your way to work? What's got you up so early?
Got an 8:54 tea time.
Oh, nice.
Where are you going?
One of the course Lafayette area. So.
All right, fair enough. All right, what's on your mind?
Well, I'm just weighing in on what you said about the 4th of July. I agree wholeheartedly with you. We have animals, and they just completely freak out. We've got a place behind our house. They'll start lighting them off this weekend, and it'll go until the 5th. And Four-Fingered Freddy and Tom Thumbless over there blowing up.
I mean, my thing is this, Dave. If people want to celebrate Independence Day, I totally get it, right? But, don't sit there and say that you are all of a sudden like a communist because you're like, okay, it's 12:30. Can we stop with the fireworks, right? That's fair, right?
Right. And where we live, it's on the boonies. And so, that's just it's like manna from heaven when fireworks come around.
I'm telling you. And you do feel sorry for the animals, man. So, Dave, hit them straight today, all right?
Hey, I shall. You guys have a great one. Enjoy your holiday.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, you got to – I appreciate Dave agreeing with me. I figured people would call up here and automatically, start calling me Kim Jong-un or something.
Oh, jeez.
You know what I mean?
That's a bit extreme, I would say. But
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I know. I agree with that. Like I said, as a former dog owner and all that, dog hated it. I'm curious how Boo's going to handle the 4th of July.
Boo's chill.
Is he?
Yeah, he doesn't.
He's going to be the one lighting the mortars off.
He's a cat, right? Boo's like, yeah, whatever. He's totally chill with it. But dogs, man, dogs go crazy over it.
Oh, yeah. My dog hated it.
I don't. Is it the noise for dogs or is it the? I mean, obviously it's the noise, but storms though, dogs can sense the bariatric pressure changes and they start freaking out.
Yeah, my dog would go
deal.
My dog would go in the bathroom, hide in the shower when storms would come through. So yeah, fireworks were no joke either there.
Rob, what's up? What's up, Rob?
Rob?
Hey, I just wanted to say my Saturday is now completely screwed up because I had tickets to last night's Savannah Bananas game. So now we're going on Saturday at noon, but because of my wonderful departed uncle Dave Benner, we're going to the Dave Matthews concert on Saturday night.
Well,
that's a long day.
That is a long day.
You got to pace yourself.
That's a fun day, though.
But listen, Rob,
I get to go with my daughter, so that'd be awesome. We're going to both, so.
And you know what? Benner would probably be happy that you're going to the Bananas game, too, because certainly Bill Benner, your other uncle, loves supporting the local sports, right? And Dave Benner, who was the biggest Dave Matthews fan ever.
Yes.
And I know that on the JMV Takeover, Bill Benner called in recently to have him play Dave Matthews, and I called Bill and said, listen, I'm a little bit upset with you that you would hijack my Saturday by making me listen to a Dave Matthews song while I'm driving around, but because it was for Dave Benner, I totally get it.
Yes.
Rob, let me say this, man, and you know this. I'm not going to tell you anything that you don't already know. But as you know, your Uncle Dave was a beloved figure not only within the city of Indianapolis for Pacer fans, but amongst the local media.
Absolutely.
And he spotted for me, I think it was 2 years ago, I had him, he came up with me in the perch for NASCAR weekend, and he had gone to Dave Matthews the night before. He was, at that time, it was when he was battling his illness, but he soldiered through to be able to go. When you are at Dave Matthews, I know I don't have to tell you this, but when you are stopping to think about your uncle and what that concert meant to him, just be aware of the fact that you are doing so and representing a ton of people, because Dave was a beloved figure and is still missed on the regular by people in this town.
Well, the last time I saw Dave Matthews was 1996, and he opened up for Big Head Todd and the Monsters in Fort Wayne.
Wow. Man, that you want to and now Big Head Todd's like playing the Vogue, right?
It goes for me. That's the last time I saw Dave. So I pulled one out of the cradle this weekend. We're going to go ahead and go and in representation and enjoy the show. So.
Well, enjoy it, man. Enjoy that.
Pace
enjoy
yourself
the game
on Saturday, Dave.
That's right,
Rob.
Go easy, Rob, at the Savannah Bananas game, and don't get too crazy. Right? That's pretty awesome, though. Let's go to JJ. What's up, JJ?
Hey, what's up, fellas? Happy Friday from Muncie, home of the Ball State Cardinals. Always fly the W. Let's go,
chirp, chirp.
That's right.
Hey, just a couple of good pluses for this weekend. I like they just came up with this new campground right at the corner of Maryland and 146 called Close By. It's pretty cool. So it's just down from Ruoff. So, if you go to Ruoff and you had a couple or something like that, you can hit that campground.
I saw that last night. People were already starting to camp out.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. There's a lot of people, and they weathered the storm also. And another plus, this rain really helped kind of clear that air, man. That's really good rain. Needed the rain. The air is clear, so it's perfect for the 4th of July weekend. And lastly, about the fireworks, where I grew 1st, and they ended January 1st, and they started again January 1st.
Oh, boy.
Man, I'm telling you what.
Let's done. Let's get it done. Hey, man, I appreciate you guys. Y'all have a great weekend.
Thanks, JJ. Chirp, chirp. I'm telling you, I think it's supposed to rain, right?
Yeah, looks like every day but Monday's got rain in the forecast at some point. From now to like next Friday.
By the way, speaking of the Savannah Bananas, that's taking place on Saturday, but there's baseball to talk about last night to lead us off in the morning checkdown.
The Morning Checkdown. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Real quick, if you're on the line, stick around through the break. We got an open segment till Joel Erickson joins us at 9. So if you're calling in, stay on the line. We'll get to you.
Phillies over the Cubs last night, 3-1 in Major League Baseball. It was Pittsburgh over the Padres, 5-4. Brewers over the Mets, 3-2. The Cincinnati Reds had the day off, but the Cardinals losing to the Astros, 14-0. Astros thought about going for 2 late, but just went ahead and kicked the extra point. Rays over the Diamondbacks, 6-1. It was Miami, Toronto, New York, that's the Yankees, the Tigers, White Sox, and Royals all getting wins. Indianapolis Indians, 9-8 winners last night in Louisville over the Bats.
Not a good night for the Indiana Fever. They got whooped by the Phoenix Mercury, 85-63. That's now a 3-game losing streak and losers of 4 of their last 5. They try to get back on track when they host the Chicago Sky Sunday back at Gainbridge Fieldhouse at 4 p.m.
In the NFL yesterday, not a good day either for Isaiah Rodgers and Rashad Berry. Those 2 Colts have been released from the franchise after the announcement from the National Football League that they will be suspended as part of the investigation in gambling. Isaiah Rodgers suspended, quote, indefinitely. He, it turns out, placed 100 small wagers, quote unquote, including a $1,000 wager on a parlay prop bet involving the Indianapolis Colts in a game in which he played. So Isaiah Rodgers Sr., now the cornerback for the Colts, it is official what we had long expected, and that is the fact that he will be out indefinitely in the NFL. In the NBA, free agency, James Harden deciding, yes, indeed, I will go ahead and take the option and take my $36.5 million from Philadelphia this year. The Sixers say, well, we'll see about that because they are now trying to set up a trade for Harden. The Clippers believed to be a destination of choice. Harrison Barnes signs a 3-year deal to stay in Sacramento. He was a target for Pacers in free agency.
What else we got?
What else we got as we return back, 9 o'clock, Joel A. Erickson joins us. We'll take your phone calls. Phone lines are lit up like the fireworks are going to be over the course of the weekend. 239-1070. It is Kevin and Query here on The Fan.
Weekdays 3 till 6
on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
Today is gonna be the day.
It's Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
You should have somehow realized what you gotta do.
8:30.
I don't believe that anybody
Jake Query,
feels the way
Mark
I
Dighton,
feel about you now.
Sam Fritz spinning the hits for us.
The Oasis hits.
Now, the beginning of this, though, I don't know that anybody would remember this part of it, right?
I think this is the most famous part of the song.
No way.
Okay, this might be an age difference. At least for people my age, Wonderwall is just a meme. It's not known as the number one hit that it was. There's a phrase that people say, and Mark, you might have heard of this. Whenever there's like an awkward silence in the conversation, you just go, anyway, here's Wonderwall, and then the beginning of the song.
Do you know? Are you familiar with this, Mark?
I am not, no.
Anybody?
But get to the chorus. Go to the chorus of it.
All right, give me a second.
We should do a poll on this. Which is more immediately recognized, the beginning of the song or this?
Because maybe you're gonna be the one.
This would be the part people would recognize. Like the average person would go, oh, yeah, okay, I know that, right?
I'd say either or. I think the beginning of the song or the chorus, they're both very famous.
I would lean for Jake on this one, but
anybody under the age of 30, please call into the show and validate that anyway.
There's nobody
here's
under the age
Wonderwall.
of 30 listening to the show after our last diatribe. That's the issue, right? Michael joins us on the program on line number 3, Sam. What's up, Michael?
Hey, Jake. Good morning, sir. Happy 4th of July to you and Mark, man.
Good seeing you the other night. What's going on?
Now, I'm going to tell you, we talked about in the thing in the YouTube chat. One thing I mean, I don't have an issue with fireworks and stuff like that, but after the 4th of July, being a veteran and stuff like that, it kind of can bring up PTSD issues, which I've had in the past because of being in the service and stuff. And it almost cost me, almost a few times, it cost me to get into a few fights with the people who did it.
You know what, Michael, and I appreciate it, and appreciate the service as well, and happy Independence Day to you. You're not the only one to point that out. A couple of people have said that, along with, we know animals, obviously. With, I mean, just for example, like the huge aerial mortar bombs. I mean, I'm talking like the window rattling. If you're setting those off in a neighborhood, it's like, come on, man.
Yeah. Be respectful of your neighbors.
I mean, veterans in general, and Michael. I've known Michael a long time, and I know that some of the challenges that come with that. And again, I get it. I mean, I understand why people want to celebrate the independence of the United States, but like, if it's 12:30, 1 o'clock at night, and you're still setting off fireworks, and your neighbor's like, "Hey, can we calm it down a little bit?" The response is not like, "Oh, I guess you hate America." Okay, no, actually, I like my sleep.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Caleb wants to talk a little Isaiah Rodgers. Caleb, what's going on, man?
Hey, Mark. Good morning, Jake. Good morning, Sam. Happy Friday before the July 4th weekend, everybody out there.
Thank you. Same to you. What's up?
Thank you. I appreciate it here. I wanted to talk about the Isaiah Rodgers thing because my thesis in college, I graduated in 2020. So my senior year started right when sports gambling became legal nationwide. And I wanted to write a senior thesis about the potential effects of it here. And I'm really thankful that I did, that I looked into the history books here, because I found a story about the 1877 Louisville Grays and Jim Devlin. Now, I know in the market of Indianapolis, talking about baseball when I called in to talk about football is a misnomer a little bit. And I appreciate that you all are giving me the time to say my piece here. But I wonder that if these gambling issues continue and if they begin to reach levels where they begin to impact like a whole team, that if the NFL wouldn't consider contracting teams. Because at some point in time, if you're not going to have a trustworthy franchise, why would you continue to have them in the league if they're going to impact the results of your league just for the sake of gamblers?
But the difference is this, Caleb. The difference between now and gambling scandals of, like, say, the Chicago Black Sox, things like that, the difference now is that back then it was illegal for everyone. And now, because of the legalized aspect of it, I mean, you have to police from the player's standpoint, but you can't totally start damning the principle or the policy of it and turning off your fan base from participating in it. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
It does, but the problem is I wonder I wonder if the fan base, some people's version of fandom's in it for the wrong reason.
Well, of course. But
10 years ago when I go to Pacers games, people wouldn't yell at Paul George for missing a free throw and losing $100 on a game.
Yeah, but here's the thing. From the NBA standpoint, those people paid to get in there, right?
Sure. That's fair.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, and it's a slippery slope for certain, Caleb. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You raise an interesting point. It's a slippery slope for certain. But again, I'm going to go back to what I said yesterday.
He said 1877, by the way, and I thought it was the pop quiz. I was like, there's no way it's 9:30 already. I thought this was a Scotty question.
I'm going to go back to what I said yesterday. If somebody, and I've thought a lot about this, if you were a bartender, alcohol is a very dangerous drug for a lot of people. One thing that you don't know from one person to the next is how that person's body is going to process, absorb, be affected by the intake of alcohol. And if you are a bartender, it is your job to not only serve alcohol, but to also make sure that someone is not overserved and to use your expertise to determine when that might be the case. But you don't know how much it's affecting one person to the next. So you have to defer to the fact that there is a personal responsibility of the customer to know when they are too impaired to continue. And your job is to provide for what is a legal option for the customer. The customer's job is, to a great extent, have the personal responsibility and discipline to know when the legal practice of what is available to them has become an impediment on their daily life. The same is true with gambling. As a sports league, you are the bartender. You are providing a product that then, now that it is legal in most states, you are providing a product that your customer base has the personal responsibility and decision to choose the level and the amount of which they partake. And it is the responsibility and the discipline of the individual to determine whether or not they have been overserved or whether or not they are able to responsibly handle that. That's a very tricky thing. It's a very dangerous thing. But the NFL is smart enough to know that while people that are fans of the Indianapolis Colts in the city of Indianapolis are by and large going to watch a Colts game on television because they're a fan of the Colts, there are also a lot of people living in Indianapolis that would otherwise not watch the Thursday night game between the Buffalo Bills and the Arizona Cardinals, except for they now have an invested financial interest in that. And it is the NFL's best interest that people do that because it creates and facilitates awareness of their product. And they have to operate under the assumption that people therefore are responsibly able to ingest it. What becomes an issue is when you go into a bar or you go into a restaurant and the bartender or the waiter is they themselves are drinking while they are serving alcohol. Thus, their ability to monitor and oversee and properly, responsibly determine that area, like I said, of whether or not somebody's overserved becomes compromised. The same is true in the National Football League of making sure that their players, who in this case are their bartenders, are not themselves partaking in something that then would cause them to bleed into an area where their own responsibility is compromised because they are trying to affect the outcome of a game. It is in the best interest of the National Football League to do everything they can to present the perception that when someone places a wager on that Bills-Arizona Cardinals game, they know that it is done with quote-unquote integrity. There is an element of irony in saying that you are policing the gambling within your own sport to preserve the integrity of the game as to make sure that people themselves can be trusted, or that they can trust, I should say, that the league is doing what they can to make sure that you're placing a fair bet. but that's where they are.
Yeah, because the second that bettors start thinking that games are compromised or that they aren't fair is when the NFL's going to start losing money. Then they're going to be
interest.
And then that's going to be a bigger red flag because then all of a sudden there's no trust in the games. The players might be betting on themselves or against themselves, so why would I put my own money on there? And then that's going to hurt not only the NFL's pocketbooks, that's going to hurt the Vegas sports books, that's going to hurt the TV deals that the NFL gets in the future. If there's any call to question that their games are not 100%, fair. So, yeah, it's a slippery slope. We'll see what happens with all that. Joe, Caleb, Matthew, stay on the line. You're listening to Kevin and Query, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Matinee, Tuesday at 12:30 on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Joel A. Erickson joining us in 15 minutes on a spectacular sun splash in clear sky, thank goodness, Friday. Good morning to you.
This was his closer last night, right?
Yes. Noel Gallagher last night playing, and this was what he ended with, and it was great.
Love
the whole
the
crowd
song.
singing along. It was fabulous. We've been talking about Oasis this morning because Noel Gallagher played last night to a very small crowd at Ruoff. I love Ruoff, though. It's a great facility, and he sounded great. I just think that most people didn't realize, well, first off, the weather didn't help, but I think a lot of people don't realize, like, wait a minute, that's one of the Oasis dudes?
Yeah.
And then, like we talked about, if he reunited with his brother and they performed as Oasis, it would be massive. But I couldn't believe this morning, for those that are just joining us this morning, where have you been? When I was talking about Oasis earlier, there were people that called in and were like, yeah, I've never heard of Oasis. And I'm like, I get that you might not know off the top some, but to say you've never heard of them
seems a bit strong.
I mean, they sold 70 million albums. That's a decent amount. But we played Wonderwall earlier at the beginning of it. I probably should have clarified, but I'll do so once Caleb joins in to verify Sam here.
This is Caleb number 2, by the way.
That's right. Caleb 2. What's up, Caleb?
How we doing today, guys?
Doing all right?
Good. Hey, Sam's 100% right. I'm 29, and anytime it was kind of a thing, like I would say 5 years ago, but even still, for people our generation, if there's awkward silence, you're like, well, anyway, here's Wonderwall. That is 100% true.
Well, but what I'm saying is so tell me if this makes sense, Caleb. What I'm saying is if you stopped 100 people on the street and you played a 10-second snippet, the first 10 seconds of the song or the chorus, which one would have a higher percentage of people that would recognize that what you are hearing is Wonderwall?
The chorus, I would agree with you there.
Yeah, that's my point. Simply because if you are saying to somebody, you know the song Wonderwall, right? And they're like, I'm not sure if I do or not. And you play the chorus, that is the one that they're more likely to go, oh, absolutely, yeah, I knew what that is.
Yeah, and I think even kids younger than me maybe would say the first part of it because of like TikTok and things like that. But people like my age and a little bit older, or people that were around when the song came out, yeah, 100% the chorus. And then Jake, I had one thing for you I wanted to run by you before I let you go. I know in the winter you become random fans of random high school basketball teams across the state of Indiana. I want to lobby for your fandom for the school I coach at this year.
Now, let me ask you this, Caleb. I like this, okay?
Yep.
You coach, don't tell me the name of the school. We're going to play a quick guessing game. I love doing these. So I live in the vicinity of Butler University. I'll put it to you that way, okay?
Yep.
If you had a 7:30 tip, what time would you suggest I leave my house to get to where you're coaching at a home game?
Well, hopefully you leave for the JV game because I coach a JV team, so I'd love to see you at the 6 o'clock tip there. So you'd probably leave at about 5.
Okay, so an hour away. Now, if I were to leave, I would drive, and I drove right to your school. I would go through how many counties? Including Marion.
Just two.
Okay, and then lastly, if I was to wear a T-shirt of your mascot, it would say "Go what? Go Royals, Go Tigers." What's that?
Tigers.
I'm going to guess that you are coaching the JV basketball team in the home of Rick Mount. Is that right?
That is incorrect. No.
Okay.
Other side of 465.
Oh, that would be. Hold on, I know this. Is Triton Central the Tigers?
No. Yeah, they are, but that's the wrong side. So you're now. I'm talking like so Lebanon's to the west. I'm thinking the east, the 465.
Well, Fishers would be my other guess.
That's it, right there. There you go.
Now, if I had to be, let me ask you something, Caleb.
Yep.
If I'm living in Meridian Kessler and you're at Fishers High School and you're telling me it takes an hour to get there, are you thinking I'm using a Lime scooter?
Well, no. I mean, so basically the reason I say that is because like traffic is so bad at that point in time.
Well, that is true. That is true, man.
We play Ben Davis first night of the year, and we have to leave Fishers. It's not that far, but we have to leave Fishers at almost 4 o'clock to get there.
Now, Fishers has like one of the top players in the state, right?
We do, yes, we do. We have a lot of really good top players, but one gets a lot of notoriety, while all of our other guys have really developed and are coming. We were really young last year, but yes.
Hey, Caleb, you've coached JV for how long now?
I'll be going into my third year doing the JV, but I've been here since Coach Wagner took over.
What offense do you run?
We run a dribble drive motion offense. We're pretty dynamic, though. We do quite a few things, but that's our primary is a dribble drive motion offense.
What do you run defensively?
Man-to-man, full court pressure the entire time.
Ooh, 40 minutes of hell, huh? Or I guess 32 minutes at high school level, right?
Yeah, well, it's JV, and you're doing 28. So 7 minutes times 4, 28.
28 minutes of hell, baby. All right. All I know is when I was at North Central, we ran the Tennessee offense. I don't even know what the Tennessee offense is. We ran the flex, and then we ran Tennessee, and I couldn't learn either of it because I couldn't figure out algebra or how to run an offense. So every time the ball came to me, it was going up.
Well, we have kids that come up through middle school and elementary school that don't know how to run flex now, so it's kind of being phased out. But we still use some compartments of it, but it's not super prevalent anymore.
You love guys like me. You love guys like me that put it up every single time. Caleb, I appreciate it. Go Tigers. I'll come up to a Fishers JV game this year.
You leave at 2 o'clock.
I'll leave at 2. That's right, to make sure I'm getting there on time.
Matthew's been patient. Matthew, what's up?
Good morning, guys. Can you hear me?
Matthew, how are things at the bottom of the ocean?
Get away from that jet engine.
Well, I'm driving north on 95, so this is going to be tough.
Well, keep your hands at the 10-2 position. All right, Matthew, what's up?
Oh, no.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Sorry, this is the first time I've had to do this.
Gee, we can't tell.
All right, just real quick little nugget for you because I just picked up my friend. I now know why Shawshank was filmed in Ohio and not on location in Maine, because if they filmed it on location, Andy would have had quite the fall into the river below, and I think that film would have had a very different outcome.
Not only that, there's only like 2 weeks of the year where he would have been able to like get out throughout the and wearing only without a winter coat and boots and everything else.
That is very true. The fact that he even found 14 banks in Portland, Maine is the most fictional part of that whole film.
It's a fabulous movie, though. All right, Matthew, you got an IndyCar question?
Yeah, it's kind of a two-part one that's only for me and no one else. Who do I have to petition to get IndyCar to come back to Loudon? And if I was successful in that petition, could Grosjean actually finish a race there? Because I'm getting very concerned about this.
Okay, now, Matthew, your first question, who would you have to petition? That would be Jay Fry or Mark Miles would be in charge of figuring out whether or not they go back to Loudon. That's a good question, actually. I think I do hear Loudon mentioned every once in a while. I don't know how much on the forefront. In terms of Grosjean, Romain Grosjean, you know, the sand is probably going through the hourglass in the patience for Romain Grosjean. There's an interesting article today from Nathan Brown saying that Grosjean would like to return to Andretti Autosport. I think a lot of that is dependent upon the first domino in terms of the quote-unquote silly season is going to be what happens. I mean, there are a number, but it begins with Alex Palou. If Palou goes to McLaren, if Palou leaves altogether, then his seat opens up at Ganassi. Does Chip Ganassi decide to keep Marcus Ericsson full-time, or does Ericsson then go to Andretti Autosport if Palou stays at Ganassi? So a lot begins with Palou. So there's your question, Matthew, is in terms of Grosjean, it's going to be where is he driving? Is he full-time with Andretti? And then in terms of Grosjean, does he have the discipline and the mindset to be able to finish a race? I mean, it's a flippant question, but a good question because it's one that absolutely has come into play now. A lot of the problem for Romain Grosjean, who I like him as a dude. I like him. I think he's a talented driver. But I think there was a lot of ballyhoo about him because of coming in, the Formula One background, the Drive to Survive moment with the fiery crash. And with Grosjean, his competitors, and this is a huge part, I think, of racing in general. But the biggest challenge for Grosjean has been that I'm not going to say he's not respected by his competitors, but a lot of them don't like him. They don't like racing against him. I shouldn't say they don't like him as a person. They don't like racing against him because he's erratic and unpredictable in their eyes. I'm not in a car, so I'm only parroting what drivers have told me. But that is that there are certain drivers, Scott Dixon comes to mind, Joseph Newgarden comes to mind, Scott McLaughlin comes to mind. There are certain drivers that if you talk to other drivers, they will tell you when I'm driving and I look in my mirror and I see that driver next to me, I'll race wheel to wheel with them any day because I respect their sportsmanship. And I know they're not going to do anything crazy. They're not going to be unpredictable, and they're going to understand like when to kind of back out. McLaughlin and Romain Grosjean had that incident at the beginning of the year. And that was McLaughlin's fault, to be quite truthful, if I remember correctly. So it's not always Grosjean's fault, but I think that Grosjean is the one that they have the hardest time predicting where he is going to go, and his indecisiveness has hurt him.
He's had a couple week stretch like where he was right at the top of the leaderboard, and everywhere else this season it's been middle of the road or way in the back.
Yeah, he reminds me a little bit, and to be honest, and this is probably an unpopular opinion, because the guy is a dynamic talent and to a great extent probably the future of the sport, if not the now of the sport. But Pato O'Ward is also another one that is starting to toe up to that dangerous line of becoming Thomas Scheckter. And Scheckter, a lot of people used to tell me about Thomas Scheckter, that Scheckter had almost like and I don't mean this lightly, like an attention deficit disorder that would creep up on him over the course of a race. Like if you looked at Scheckter at Indy, his line, and by line I mean the groove in which he was driving his car, it would start to get a little bit further and further out over the course of the race. Like his attention to detail in the turns and in the corners would start to stray out a little bit, and then he would get up into the marbles, and that's the area of the racetrack where the rubber debris is, and you lose grip, and then boom, he hits the wall. And that would happen to Scheckter over the course of races because he would just all of a sudden lose his focus. And I think that Pato O'Ward this year has shown some of those weaknesses of just being up towards the front and running well, and then having just a moment of a complete mental lapse for whatever reason, where he throws a race away or throws away
like
a good
too
result.
aggressive almost.
Correct. And that
that
aggression, I think, comes from just a maturity, but the time for Pato O'Ward to learn that maturity is now, and the time for Romain Grosjean to learn that maturity is now, and the time for Joel Eriksson to join us on the program is now as well, or more appropriately said, after the next break.
on the Fan. You're listening to Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
It is 9 o'clock in Indianapolis. For that matter, it's 9 o'clock everywhere in the Eastern time zone.
Did this one get played yesterday? I don't think so. Did it?
In the concert?
Yeah.
No. I'll read for you the songs that he played.
I glanced at the set list. I don't think I saw that one.
There were only Noel Gallagher played last night, 14 songs, the last 8 of which were Oasis songs, and he ended with "Don't Look Back in Anger," which was great because people kind of basically sang along to it. He did not mention Oasis. He said, we're going to go back to the mid-'90s. And there was a kid in the crowd that he kind of was talking to. He asked the kid said he was 12. And he's like, well, you wouldn't know these songs, but I'm going to ask you to keep buying the albums because my kid's livelihood depends on it. He played The Master Plan, Going Nowhere, Little by Little, Half the World Away, Live Forever, and Don't Look Back in Anger. And it was great. Now, Live Forever, he played almost like a slow version of it. But it was great. And literally, he played the songs and then was like, okay, thank you, and was done. Done by 10:45. Joining us now, by the way, on the Payless Liquors hotline, you know his work from the Indianapolis Star, talking about the Colts, talking about Joel A. Erickson. And Joel would begin with what we talked about earlier. Isaiah Rodgers, Rashad Berry, yesterday released from the team. Obviously, the Colts were awaiting official word from the NFL on these suspensions. Isaiah Rodgers, who was going to be a guy that was going to get plenty of reps this year, out, quote, indefinitely. Now, I guess it's probably dangerous perhaps for us to speculate, but we're going to do so anyway, on what indefinitely means. In my opinion, he does not play another NFL game. Your thoughts?
Are you saying he doesn't play another NFL game because the NFL does that or because the league does that?
I believe personally that his suspension probably, I don't know when he would be reinstated, but out of sight, out of mind, and I think it's probably difficult for a guy that's on the fringe anyway to stay in the level of shape necessary to play in the NFL after at minimum a year off, and I'll bet it's more than a year.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be difficult, and if it's 1 year, he may have a shot in a training camp. If for some reason his indefinite goes longer than that, because there's always the possibility, I guess, with some of the stuff that was reported, that maybe they view his as different. If it goes longer, I think it's worse. I've kind of been thinking along the same lines as you. I mean, Calvin Ridley is one thing, but Calvin Ridley had a 1,400-yard season in Atlanta. That's
Calvin Ridley also didn't bet on the Falcons,
right? But even beyond that, I think if the league reinstated you and you were good enough and you bet on your own team, I think someone would find a place for you. I don't know that Isaiah Rodgers has established. I do know Isaiah Rodgers has not established himself as that type of player, where you overlook stuff. And I know Colts fans love him. I know he's a fan favorite, but he just hasn't. I'm not sure he has 500 defensive snaps in the season yet. So I think some stuff could maybe get overlooked if you are really, really good, but are really, really established. But he's not in that spot.
Joel, was there any inkling that Rashad Berry was involved with this? I've heard Isaiah Rodgers, obviously, he came out publicly and said, hey, my bad, it was me. But I hadn't heard Rashad Berry's name mentioned once. I hadn't heard there's multiple Colts involved. How surprised were you when you heard that he was also indefinitely suspended?
Well, Rashad Berry is we didn't really know a ton about him. And they signed him off the practice squad late in a lost season. Off of the Jags practice squad late in a lost season. He didn't really look like he looked like a long shot, given some of the given the rest of the guys that they've invested into on the defensive line. So I don't think we were thinking about him necessarily in general until hey, you got to show me something in training camp to catch our attention. But beyond that, this is the way Barry's has gone, or the way the tackle from Tennessee's has gone. That's more along the lines of the way these gambling stories have gone in the NFL. For the most part, we find out that they happen when the suspensions happen. If I remember right, I think that's the way the Lions went too. The difference with Rodgers was there was an early report, and so we knew about it ahead of time. But generally, the way this has gone down is, maybe after a Rappaport gets an inkling a couple hours beforehand, but it's pretty much been the NFL does its investigation, hands out suspension, and that's when you have the actual information that you find out that this has happened.
Yeah, we heard Rodgers made upward of 100 bets and he got the indefinite suspension. Do we have any idea how severe Barry's bets were? Like how many there were? Did he bet on the Colts? Do we have any inkling on what that was?
No. Well, for him the only game he could have bet on the Colts would have been the last one.
Right, but I'm saying to get an indefinite suspension, I'm assuming he had to have gambled on the NFL as well, and I don't know if he placed any bets on the Colts. But
so the difference between the 6-game suspension and the full game suspension, so far, at least as far as I know it, is guys have gotten the 6-game suspension. This is Jamison Williams. I actually don't know how to pronounce the Titans tackle's name. Petit Frere? I'm not sure. But those guys bet on sports inside the facility, and that's why they got 6 games instead of a year. The guys who've gotten a year bet on the NFL. Now, the added piece of betting on their own team is where I think there's some uncertainty in the Rodgers indefinite suspension. It says they can apply for reinstatement after the 2023 season. I wonder if that's the same for all of them, if that's going to go the same for all of them, betting on your own team. But that's been the demarcation line so far. Is 6 games is for betting on sports inside the facility or at a team function. A full year suspension, which they always announce as indefinite, is for betting on the NFL.
Okay, I'm going to ask Joe for, as best we know it, in the same analogy that I used earlier, and I want your thoughts on this. There are 2 ways that someone can get caught for driving while impaired. The first is they happen to be driving while impaired, and there is a random police setup, not setup's the wrong word, but a checkpoint where they're pulling over every third car, and that person happens to get pulled over in that checkpoint, and they're impaired, and they get arrested. The second is they're driving erratically, and somebody notices they're driving erratically and calls the police, who then intentionally pull that person over. In the case of these indiscretions with the Colts players, which is it? Were they caught up in a league-wide search, or was the league tipped off and therefore those 2 players were specifically investigated, thus there could be other cases out there that are unknown as of yet?
I think it's hard, because if you say there could be other cases out there, then people are going to assume that they are. But my understanding is that this was something that maybe the Colts were taken a little bit by surprise by.
Correct. I believe that's factual. It's my understanding, Joel, that Isaiah Rodgers knew about this before the Colts.
Yeah, that's sort of what I understood too. And as far as how they get caught, I'll be honest. I didn't. When this initially broke, I was not the reporter who talked to the Indiana Gaming Commission. I don't know if the hard part is I'm not sure exactly how they figured this out. I do wonder, though, if it's easier to see this stuff or find this stuff in a digital age when, instead of going to a bookie, you're everything's online and it's on your phone. I wonder if it's easier for the Gaming Commission to track.
I mean, that's got to be. it's kind of a moot point, I guess, except for it makes you wonder, and you're right, to be careful, Joel. That's not to say that thinking there could be others out there means that this is like something that there definitively are, but I do think that that's an interesting thing because I think now, Joel, the league would have a clearer understanding because partially of this. And maybe I'm just saying that because esoterically in Indianapolis it's been on our radar because of the Rodgers situation. And I'm sure the players have been briefed on this far more than have we prior to this. But I can totally understand how some player is sitting there at his locker during off-season OTAs, and he's like, he's scrolling through, and he sees an offer from one of the apps that's like, hey, $20 wager on the All-Star game, the Major League All-Star game. Yeah, okay. Seems innocuous enough, except for you're inside the parameters of the building. I could see how they would not have known that before. They sure as hell better know it now.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I keep coming back to is that for players, the NFL's gambling policy is actually, to me, someone else could disagree with this, but to me, it's actually fairly permissive. They are allowed to bet on other sports as long as they don't do it from the team facility. That's a whole range of things that they're allowed to bet on. I know that is not true of, say, personnel or coaches at the NCAA level. I believe the rule in the NCAA is if a sport is governed by the NCAA, you are not allowed to bet on it at any level. Therefore, the fact that there are men's soccer teams at some schools means you can't bet on for the Premier League or the Italian League or anything like that. I also know that in the NFL, the rules are more stringent for business staff, front office staff, than they are for the players. And so that's one of the things that keeps sticks out to me is just there are ways to bet. Probably more than some people would expect if they work in one of those other areas. But you just can't do it it makes sense. It makes obvious sense, like why you can't bet on the NFL. At least it makes obvious sense to me.
And this is true, Joel, of all staff, right? Like if you're the guy that is the nutritional chef inside the Colts complex, the same rules apply to you, correct?
Yeah, my understanding is that you're not like the business staff is. It's like a hard no bet, no gamble.
Joel Erickson of the Indianapolis Star joining us. He covers the Colts. Joel, with Isaiah Rodgers out of the picture, how would you describe the current state of the Colts cornerback room?
Young and unproven and thin. They drafted three guys, one in the second, one in the fifth, one in the seventh. There are examples of guys in all of those rounds, definitely the second and the fifth, starting and playing well across the NFL over the last couple of years. I think it's important to remember you can do that with any round at almost any position except quarterback, and people can even come up with quarterbacks who started and played well, especially after Brock Purdy. The reality is that most guys take a little time. And Chris Ballard has said that over and over again about their draft picks, is that they're not going to necessarily come in as finished products. Well, that's going to be true of this cornerback room as well, most likely. If they hit with starting two of the three starting caliber, if two of the three guys are starting caliber corners right now, immediately as we speak today, that would be a wild coup for the Colts, just historically. So, if you look at what they've got, then you've got Dallas Flowers, who is admittedly physically supremely talented. They believe that from the moment they got him in as an undrafted free agent last year. But he still doesn't have a ton of snaps playing cornerback. And then you have a bunch of rookies. So it's thin. You contrast that to last year where you had obviously a clear number one on the outside in Gilmore. You had a guy who, if he was not a starter, had starting experience in Brandon Faison, and had played in a major role at some point in Brandon Faison. That's such a big difference from where they are now in terms of experience, in terms of being proven in the NFL. I keep thinking they have to sign a veteran. I mean, almost just for the numbers, but also for the fact that they just don't have anybody on the outside. Because when we talked to Kenny Moore, Kenny Moore will probably play on the outside in base, but when we talked to Kenny Moore, he was talking about, the role he was talking about was in the slot where he's been most of his career. So Kenny Moore is obviously very, very experienced and very accomplished, but he's going to play most of his snaps on the inside. So on the outside, they are painfully thin and short of experience.
Joel, there's no silver lining. Joel Erickson, by the way, is our guest on the Payless Liquors Hotline. It's hard to say, I should say, that there would be a silver lining in a gambling scandal that suspends a player indefinitely. But if there was one for the Colts, it would be the fact that this is a golden opportunity, it would seem, for a young player from Indianapolis in Juju Brents, right? Doesn't he stand to benefit here in terms of moving his way quickly into an area where if he can show something in camp, he's going to have opportunity?
Yeah, I think it's a lot like I think to me it's a lot like when they picked Rock Yassin in the second round. He played significantly right away, and there wasn't necessarily a ton of people in the way in that camp, and that's kind of I think where what it looks like for Juju Brents. Juju Brents has a golden. And really for Darius Rush too. These are golden opportunities for them as rookies to hit the ground running and surprise people. And Brent's especially being a second round pick, given his athleticism, given everything we know about him, it stands to reason that he's got the best shot at it right away.
Joel, what's the more difficult contract to negotiate for the Colts upcoming? Jonathan Taylor or Michael Pittman Jr.?
I think it's Pittman is more difficult.
Good Lord.
Is he emailing you right now?
Sorry, that's my computer does updates, and I made the mistake of turning it on to check a snap count thing while I was talking to you guys. I think it's Pittman because of the sheer numbers of what wide receivers have gotten, and trying to decide, where does he fall in that? How does the Colts just constant, upheaval at quarterback? How does that affect what we've seen from him production wise? What does he deserve? How much? Like the numbers there are so big. Whereas I think that in terms of complexity, the Taylor contract is pretty much more a simple, how much do you want to value a running back? How long do you want to give it to him? Whereas with Pittman, you have to figure out, what level of player is this? And what are we willing, like the what level of player is a complicated factor that I don't think exists in the Taylor thing. With it, when Taylor's healthy, Taylor's incredible.
Right, because Pittman is going to want to be getting paid as a number one wide receiver, which he is on this team. If he's on another team, I don't know if he's a number one. He's more of a number two, I think, from what he's produced so far. So I think he's going to be looking for a stratosphere that the Colts might not be comfortable with for a contract. Is that your idea too?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking. Is that like you might be looking at like a number one wide receiver. It's the going rate seems to start at $25 million, which is a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And they can make, and him and his agents can make the case. Just starting off of there was the Christian Kirk deal a couple years ago that everybody thought was crazy. Like Pittman has been more productive than Kirk was before he got that deal. And his agents can very, very easily make that case. So where he falls in that big range of contract, that the money at wide receiver, I think, is what makes this hard. And I think it's why you've seen really great players get traded away. like obviously Kansas City and Tyreek Hill. That's a great player, but the money receiver has gotten so big that even for the top guys, there's a hard decision that teams have to make.
Yeah, you see the Cardinals part ways with DeAndre Hopkins, and we know that Chris Ballard doesn't like paying wide receivers necessarily, so it'll be very interesting to see how they negotiate that with Michael Pittman.
Well,
I could very easily see the
here's the other
franchise
thing.
tag coming into
Dalvin
play.
Cook was allegedly offered, or reportedly offered, a deal in Miami, and Miami's got basically $14 million, $13.9 to spend. So let's say that Joel puts the market value for a running back, and Dalvin Cook's a darn good running back. If the market value for a Dalvin Cook is at 13, 14 range, Jonathan Taylor's going to want 15, 16, something like that. If there's no way if I'm the Colts I do that. And I think he's a wonderful player, a wonderful person, and a great talent, but I wouldn't pay it.
See, for me, it's not about the per year average. For me, it's about the years.
Well, that too, sure. I mean, because and it's interesting because Taylor is one guy that has shown no signs of tread on the tires, and that is to his credit. But, Joel, you got to know that eventually my fear for a Jonathan Taylor would be that because we've seen this in running backs, that when the cliff comes, it is a fall over. It's not a gradual slide. Not everybody's Frank Gore.
Right. No, well, when I say the years, I mean, like, if the deal.
Yeah, you don't want to give him 5 guaranteed.
Yeah, the deal I keep thinking about is the Nick Chubb deal in Cleveland, which has worked out very well for them. He got 3 years. The average per year on that, salary cap wise, the difference between him getting an APY of 12 and Taylor getting 15 or something like that, it's minimal, especially given that the Colts don't have a ton committed beyond this next year. But yes, the years, like if you're getting 5 guaranteed or something like that, then I think you're really nervous about it. Whereas I think maybe if you want to re-sign him, you bump up the APY and to try to keep the years down on the contract and protect yourself for that cliff you're talking about.
Joel, last thing, obviously we right now are in that kind of dead period, and the news pops up with the Isaiah Rodgers situation, for example. We will talk plenty about these contract situations. Is there anything else in terms of on the horizon from a news standpoint that we should be anticipating, or are we kind of like, let's just keep it chill until everybody's back together reporting?
No, this is one of the only truly dead periods on the NFL calendar. I mean, this is the time when just about everyone in every building is away or on vacation or hanging out with family or whatever. That's what this time of year is. Now, does it mean that they couldn't get a contract done? They could if they, if they come to the right thing and they get it together. But historically, what we've seen is that it usually comes for the Colts. If they're going to get a contract done, it usually happens more in training camp. This current period right now is when, like I said, the only really dead time on the NFL calendar. And I've heard over the years that the NFL would like to fill it with something. And basically all of the league personnel are like, we have one time that we're off. Please don't take it from us. So, yeah, no, basically, if there's news at this point of the year, the way I always think of it is if there's news at this point of the year, big news, it's usually bad.
Yeah, exactly. You would rather, if you're Chris Ballard, you'd rather be driving to work and hear 2 guys talking about, so who's your Mount Rushmore, right?
Yes, absolutely. Because almost always, every time I've ever been pulled out of like a summer like golf round or something, and it honestly, it was more when I covered the Saints than the Colts. It's for something that's like the commissioner's involved and there's going to be a suspension.
Fair enough. I would think covering the Saints would be exciting nonstop, though, because
the beignets you could eat.
You're in Narlands. That's exactly right. Joel, appreciate it, man. Enjoy the dead period.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Joel.
Computer updates, right?
And the cat meowing and the kid yelling. There was a lot going on back there.
Time now for a morning check down.
The morning check down. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Somebody got on me, said we don't talk enough racing, so we'll begin with that. The weekend schedule for you in the world of racing. It is Mid-Ohio for IndyCar. That race takes place on Sunday. Chicago streets for NASCAR this weekend, and for Formula One, it is Sunday at 9 o'clock in the morning on ESPN for the Austrian Grand Prix. You've not been to Austria, right?
No.
If you
Today,
had to
mate. Let's put another shrimp on the barbie.
No, that's Australia.
I know. It was a Dumb and Dumber reference.
If you had to rank countries in Europe you would want to visit, Austria would be where? Top 5? 5 to 10?
Probably not. It'd be top 10, I guess.
Number 1 would be what?
Probably England.
Okay, 2?
France.
3?
Poland.
Really?
I'm Polish, yeah.
Okay, 4?
Germany.
Ooh. Okay, 5?
Switzerland.
6?
Jeez, I don't know. Denmark.
7?
Ireland.
No Spain?
Spain's 8. Spain actually is probably way higher. I know.
Spain,
You're asking me on the fly.
Spain's the one of my. So
I gotta go to.
You are burying the lead with Austria here.
I just thought of Spain.
Yeah, I got to look at my map here. I'm one of those.
How about Holland?
See, you got to come back. You can't ask me these on the fly. I got to look at a map and think about things.
You know where I'm going to be in November, don't you?
What?
Luxembourg.
I know.
Highest per capita in Europe. Did you know that?
Didn't know that.
Shannon said to me, and I quote, "We're going to Luxembourg? No one goes to Luxembourg." And I said, "That's exactly why we're going there."
There you go.
What percent of people in the United States can say they've been to Luxembourg?
Probably as many that can name a Oasis song at the moment.
Last night, Major League Baseball. Give me a swoosh, Sam. Thank you. Philadelphia Phillies over the Cubs 3-1. It was the Pirates over the Padres 5-4. Brewers, Dodgers, Royals, White Sox, Tigers, Yankees all getting wins yesterday. In our race for PBR, the Diamondbacks beaten by the Rays 6-1. Cute fella, that's the Orioles, were idle. But the Oakland Athletics that Kevin has, defeated by the Yankees, as I had mentioned, the Yankees winning 10-4 yesterday over Oakland. It was Houston 14-0 over the St. Louis Cardinals. Marlins blanking the Red Sox 2-0. Blue Jays over the Giants. And the Indianapolis Indians 9-8 winners yesterday over the Louisville Bats.
I'm going to whip up a better top 10 of European countries before we get out of here, by the way. Ugly night for the Fever. They got trounced by the Phoenix Mercury 85-63. Kelsey Mitchell led the Fever with 15 points. Aaliyah Boston only 6 points, 9 rebounds. Not a great night for them. 3-game road trip ends in a 3-game losing streak. They've lost 4 out of 5. They'll try to right the ship when they host the Chicago Sky Sunday at 4 o'clock.
How about Norway?
Yeah, I forgot Italy.
Finland?
I got to add.
Italy. Italy way up there, right?
I've got to add a lot.
Norway would be number 1 on my list.
How about Iceland? Is Iceland Europe?
Technically, I think, yeah.
I think it is, right?
Yeah, let me reset and I'll look at this and I'll give a better top 10.
I guess actually this is kind of a pop quiz that I just gave to Mark because he wasn't prepared for my question about Europe. Pop quizzes, by the way, it's a freebie Friday. We would love for you to participate. If you're still listening to us at this point, 239-1070, give us a call. We would love to have you as our participant on the pop quiz, which is next.
playoff core, and we'll see what happens next week.
What happens next happens here. 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Have you studied? Can you handle the pressure? Sharpen your pencils. It's time for the Pop Quiz with Kevin and Query. Brought to you by Jiffy Lube, Indiana's favorite oil change since 1985.
So Iceland, by the way, considered Nordic, which means Northern Europe. So Iceland counts. Iceland has become like a cool, trendy thing lately for people to go to.
Currently not in my top 10 that I'm whipping up at the last second, so we'll see, though.
Who's your number one?
Well, that would be giving it away. It's called the tease, Jake. Let's save it for the next segment here. I think I listed it.
Hungary? Is
United
it Hungary?
Kingdom would be.
Is it Kazakhstan?
United. Very nice. I like you.
You do a mean Borat.
Thank you.
Can we do the rest of the show with you as
Sure.
Borat? No offense, I think I'd rather do a show with Borat than you.
Jinkui.
Borat is single-handedly the greatest fictional character ever. Do you remember when the movie was coming out and people weren't totally hip to who he was?
Yeah.
And he was going around doing like morning morning
He's in
TV
character,
shows?
not showering and everything. Like, this guy stinks.
It was phenomenal. When he goes to the southern the dinner at the people's house, fabulous.
At the McToilet.
No, thank you. Here on a Freebie Friday, and it is a gorgeous day outside. Hope you folks are set for, and again, a reminder, with Independence Day being on Tuesday, we will not be doing shows Monday or Tuesday, so we will reconvene with you on Wednesday. So certainly hope everybody is set to enjoy, if you are off on Monday as well, the long weekend. Give me number 1 through 8, Mark Dykton.
4th
As
of July.
Borat, please.
Oh. 4th of July this weekend. There you go, love America. Number 4.
Okay, caller number 4 is who?
That is Drew.
Hi, Drew. How are you?
Oh. Drew wasn't too hip to the...
They dropped as soon as we put them on.
Nice job, Drew. Do we have another one? Do we have caller number 5?
Yeah, caller number 5 will go with Austin.
What's up, Austin?
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Austin, sounds like you're driving. Where are you?
I am on 74 West.
Hopefully on a hands-free device. 74 West. Now, that would mean that you are coming towards Indianapolis from the Shelbyville area headed west, or you are headed like between here, Brownsburg, and Peoria, going that direction.
I'm currently passing Eagle Creek, so I'm heading towards Brownsburg.
Oh, give a wave to Brownsburg for me when you go
Now,
past it.
any place? Do you live in Brownsburg?
Pittsburgh.
You ever been to Mandy's Ice Cream in Brownsburg?
Several times, probably 3 times a week.
Nice. I went to high school with Mandy, so be sure and tell her I said hi.
Will do.
Fabulous ice cream, by the way. All right, Austin, are you a baseball fan?
I'm half in the bag baseball fan, I guess.
Well, then you're half in the bag screwed for this pop quiz.
No, it's a freebie Friday, though, so you call it on the right
That's
day.
right. You, when you are half in the bag baseball fan, you are a fan halfway of which base? No, I'm just kidding. Who's your team?
Cardinals.
Oh, God.
Okay. That was fun while it lasted. All right, here we go, Austin. Would you like for me, that would be Jake, or for Mark to lead you off with question number 1?
Let's go with Jake.
All right, here we go. Speaking of that, Austin, if you were to go out, like if you were going to go to Mandy's Ice Cream and enjoy a nice chocolate malt, and you could enjoy the company of myself, that would be Jake, Mark Dykton, or Kevin Bowen, which one would you pick?
Let's go with Jake. I'm a big IndyCar fan.
Nice. All right, well.
Kevin's going to take his shirt off, so I would definitely put him third.
You let me know when you'd like to meet for a
Luxembourg.
What's that?
I said, and I can tell you all about Luxembourg. I've been there a couple times.
Have you really? Is it now? Be honest. Is it cool?
Yeah, I've only been to Luxembourg City. I lived in Germany for 4 years.
Okay, so
I've been there
actually,
every once in a while.
so we're going to Amsterdam, but then once we're in Amsterdam, we're taking the train from Amsterdam to Luxembourg City to go through Belgium, and then I figured we'd spend like if I was to do 2 days and 1 night in Luxembourg City, would that be sufficient?
Plenty of time.
I mean, is it cool? Like, is there stuff to do, or is it boring?
It's not Amsterdam or Brussels by any means, but you'll find stuff to do.
Okay, cool. All right. All right, here we go. Question number 1 for you, Austin. Appreciate the info there. 115 years ago today, Cy Young threw his third career no-hitter at the age of 41 years and 93 days. Who is the oldest pitcher to throw a no-hitter in Major League history? And I can tell you he did it by striking out Roberto Alomar of the Toronto Blue Jays. Was it Cy Young himself? Obviously not. Randy Johnson, Warren Spahn, or Nolan Ryan?
Randy Johnson.
Okay.
All right. 45 years ago today, Larry Doby became the second African-American manager in Major League history when he replaced Bob Lemon of the Chicago White Sox. Frank Robinson had become the first African-American manager when he took over the Cleveland Indians in 1975, who was the first African-American manager of the National League. Larry Doby, Frank Robinson, Maury Willis, or Dusty Baker?
Let's just go Frank Robinson.
Nice. Question number 3. Shohei Ohtani homered again yesterday. That raises his MLB best 29 home runs now. Ohtani is tied for the Major League lead in triples with 5 this season. Name the last player to lead the majors in both home runs and triples in the same season. I will tell you, this guy spent the better part of his career with a monster lurking over his shoulder. Ty Cobb, Willie Mays, Jim Rice, or Larry Doby?
Larry Doby.
Okay.
Kyle Schwarber began last night's Phillies win over the Cubs with a home run. It was Schwarber's 5th leadoff home run for the month of June. 5 or more leadoff homers in a single calendar month has been done just 6 times in Major League Baseball history, most recently by Schwarber in June 2021. Only one player did it twice. Was it Ricky Henderson? What? Only one other player did it twice. Was it Ricky Henderson, Alfonso Soriano, Craig Biggio, or George Springer?
Alfonso Soriano.
Love Soriano.
Okay, question number 5 for you. Riverfront Stadium in Cincinnati opened on this day in 1970. Hank Aaron hit the first home run in the stadium's history in that first game. But who hit the last home run? It was known as Synergy Field by then, but in the same stadium, his father and brother both played in the major leagues. Was it Aaron Boone, Ken Griffey Jr., Bobby Abreu, or Adam Dunn?
Ken Griffey Jr.
All right. Who's your favorite Cardinal of all time, Austin?
McGuire.
That's a safe one.
That is a safe one.
All right, fair enough.
All right, Austin, let's see how you did. Question 1. 115 years ago, Cy Young threw his third career no-hitter. Who was the oldest pitcher to throw a no-hitter? You said Randy Johnson. It was, in fact, Nolan Ryan. 44 years, 90 days for number 7 in 1991.
My senior year in high school, and it was Roberto Alomar who got his first career hit off Nolan Ryan, by the way, who was the strikeout for his 7th no-hitter. Frank Robinson, by the way, who was not only the first person to be the MVP in both leagues, he was the first African-American manager in both leagues. Jim Rice had 46 home runs and 15 triples in 1978. Alfonso Soriano is the answer for question number 4. Austin, stay on the line because it's a freebie Friday. And Aaron Boone was the answer for question number 5. We will get Mark's much anticipated top 10 European nations.
Sweating here writing this list.
Amongst other things when we return.
The IndyCar Series races at Mid-Ohio, Sunday at 1. Brought to you by the Indiana Union Construction Industry. Skilled on principle, union by choice. On 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
It's Kevin and Query on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
This is my favorite Oasis song.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's a good song for sure. How your garden grows?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he did that last night. Noel Gallagher at Ruoff. I do love Ruoff. It's interesting to me when Ruoff was Deer Creek. I was thinking about this last night. Just how many shows have taken place there and how many I've seen, and it still looks fabulous. I mean, like the lawn and everything. I mean, you go in and it's like it looks the same as it did when I used a Sharpie to write my name on the back of a seat at Guns N' Roses the night before my last final in high school, which again shows that my parents were completely checked out, that I was the youngest. And they're like, you got a final tomorrow to graduate from high school? Cool, you're going to Guns N' Roses? Have fun. But a lot of great memories there for certain, and I'm glad that the place still looks, there's a lot of competition now. The lawn is fantastic, which is the one, what's the name of it? Is it TCU Center?
TCU Amphitheater.
TCU
at White River.
I mean, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really good.
Obviously the Murat. I mean, the Rock the Ruins now that they do. The outdoor parks at Holiday Park, the outdoor concerts. There are a lot of places to go and see a show, but last night was certainly fun at Ruoff. Okay, so your list. I've got a list here of Romania is one of them, of European countries to visit. I would like to know that Mark Dykton, now that you've had a chance to look at it, we'll start with number 10. Your 10 is what?
Germany.
Okay. 9.
Greece.
Okay. 8.
Oh, I don't like how you said that. Denmark.
You have Denmark above Greece?
Yeah.
Okay. 7.
Ireland.
Okay. 6.
Poland.
Man. Okay, 5.
Sweden. Again, I'm Polish, so I have a soft place for Poland to go to.
By the way, it's Sweden.
Okay.
Yeah. 4.
France.
Okay.
Italy.
Italy's 3. 2.
Spain.
And 1.
United Kingdom.
I think I could be wrong in this. I think your list probably, I like it because it's unique. I think most people, what would you say would be most Americans' answer as number 1?
I would say probably France or England.
I would say France or Italy. Don't you think?
I think we're all in agreement on France, which probably makes it the actual number 1 answer.
Yeah, I'm assuming like Eiffel Tower and
I mean,
all that
Paris
stuff.
I will say, I loved when we were in Paris. Loved it. Italy's, I don't know. I think Italy's really close, guys. I think between Rome, Florence, and Milan, I think Italy's way up there. It's almost like it's like Boardwalk and Park Place, I would think. Some of the underrated. So you didn't have the Netherlands there?
It's like right outside the top.
Okay.
10. But I'm whipping this up at the last second. If I did more research into it, I'm sure I would change it.
Portugal.
Portugal, I almost put on there.
Yeah, Portugal. Like, I hear Lisbon's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think Portugal would be really cool.
I'd just love to go to, like, an English Premier League game and take it all in, have a real pint. That's why UK's up there.
Iceland?
Iceland, again. I'm not gonna be opposed to going to any European
Monaco?
country. Sure.
That Princess Stephanie, wasn't she Monaco, Scotty?
I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
We haven't mentioned Sweden yet, and I do want to give them some respect. They haven't mentioned
Sweden on there.
5.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you said Switzerland. My bad. My ears
Now,
broke.
Switzerland there. Okay, Switzerland is way up there. Somebody said, what about Amsterdam? That's the Netherlands. Mm-hmm. Amsterdam's a city, not a country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're going Amsterdam, and then the train from Amsterdam to Luxembourg, it goes, basically you just go, it's kind of like going, if you were to go from Indianapolis to Nashville, and Belgium is Kentucky, if you're to take the train. So I said, and you tell me if you agree with this, Mark, I'm like, we're going to go on a train all the way through Belgium. It stops in Brussels. I'm like, we got to get out in Brussels and have a waffle and a beer.
Yeah.
Right?
Just one of each.
Right. And then get right back on the train, like, okay, there we've done it. Now, when we did the train from Paris to London, we took the Channel train, and I was so fascinated and intrigued by what it would look like, just the country, going through France like that.
Mm-hmm.
It looked to me, the train ride from Paris to London looked very similar to what it would look like if you were to take a train from Indianapolis to Chicago. Almost the same distance. And then in the countryside at that area in France was similar. One of the things that I found the most interesting is as we were riding the train maybe 5 or 6 times in the course of that journey, you would see little, like in the middle of nowhere, cemeteries. When I say cemeteries, I mean like you'd see 20 white headstones.
Mm-hmm.
And those were American soldier cemeteries from the war where like battles took place and there were casualties. And they did graves there, which I found interesting. But when you get towards London and you go under the Channel, which obviously is the tunnel underneath the English Channel, and you come up, you don't really realize when you're going under the Channel. All of a sudden it's just, it's kind of dark because there's like walls alongside before you get up to it. But you go underneath, you're probably underwater for, 4 minutes or something. You come up, and then it looked exactly, Mark, as you come up out of the English Channel and you're now in England and you're in basically the outskirts of London, it looked exactly like the stretch in Chicago when you drive in on the Dan Ryan and just like the industrial south side of Chicago from the region. That's exactly what it looked like.
Interesting.
Like almost exactly the same. What's your weekend schedule here? We've got the
rescheduled Savannah Bananas game. So they are playing tonight. Well, I'm assuming weather permitting, but the remake from yesterday's cancellation is tomorrow at noon. So we'll be going to that, and then we have to haul it to Illinois to get to a master's graduation party. So we have to do that and all that, and then we'll probably see some in-laws and whatnot for the 4th of July weekend and all that, and then head back in town since we have kind of a very long weekend. We're not back on the show until Wednesday, so we have a nice few days off to kind of re-energize and enjoy some family time and stuff. What about you guys?
Nothing really planned, to be honest with you.
Well, that's not a bad thing.
Well, I've got Mid-Ohio this weekend, IndyCar race, but and then we are off Monday and Tuesday, so for that, just kind of chilling, right?
Yep. Taking it easy, get some yard work done and all that stuff, enjoying
making sure
the holiday.
The animals don't go crazy with the fireworks. By the way, somebody said, what about Belize? Well, that's cool, but it's in Central America. We're sticking with Europe here.
Yeah. Yeah, if we're going like worldwide, then the list will be a bit different.
How about this? What is the country? I have a theory on that. What is the country that is most often thought of as being European that is not? Like for you personally, what's the country that when people say it, you're like, wait a minute, I always assumed that was in.
I think we just discussed it at the break. Russia, probably, because Russia's more Asia, right?
Yeah. I would agree with that. I mean, for
it's
far
so big,
far Western Russia is considered part of Europe, right?
Mm-hmm.
How about this one? Here's a country that, and maybe I'm admitting my own ignorance and naivete, geographically speaking. I think I knew it wasn't in Europe, but for whatever reason, and I know exactly the reason why, I always thought it was like a European country. Can you tell me any country, either one of you guys, that borders Uruguay?
No.
Not a clue.
Do you know? Scotty Johnson thinking about it here. It is South America. Peru's pretty safe. Peru or Argentina is a safe guess on any of these, right?
Venezuela?
Nope. Brazil is one. And then I just said the other one. Argentina.
Mm.
But, like, for whatever reason, I think it's because, I don't know why, like Portugal, Uruguay. I always think Uruguay is a European country.
That's true.
But it's not. It is not a European country. So, no, back to this weekend. So, the 4th of July, as I'd mentioned, I love everything about Independence Day. I love what it represents. I do love the only two things about Independence Day that three. The three things about Independence Day that just I roll my eyes at. Number one, the movie sucked. Number two, just go easy on your fireworks. Like there are plenty. I love the the small town parades, the celebration, kids with flags, the pride of being an American. I love all of that. It doesn't mean necessarily, and I totally understand for people with kids in the driveway and whatever else you want to do your own private fireworks show. I totally get it. It drives me nuts when people decide that they actually are going to do a commercial industrial size fireworks show of their own for 5 consecutive nights. And just because people from a courtesy standpoint as neighbors ask for a little bit of understanding or reprieve from that after a certain hour does not mean that those neighbors are anti-American.
Mm-hmm.
And then lastly, Sam, you said you're putting together a music list for the fireworks show. Is that right?
Yeah, it's already been put together. Well, no, I'm sorry. I'm just running the music that will be going beside it.
And does that include Born in the USA by Bruce Springsteen, which is the most commonly misunderstood, like actual kind of anti-American song ever?
I haven't heard it yet, but I don't believe
good.
so.
Have you listened to the lyrics of it? It basically is like, yeah, I'm a guy that was like completely chewed up and spit out by the American system because I was born in the USA. That's basically what it says. And people are like, oh, it's super patriotic.
Well, everybody stay safe out there. Hopefully you got some power back from the storms. If you don't, hopefully it's coming soon.
Did you lose power?
No, we did not. We surprisingly did not. I know Victory Field did, which is why the cancellation also happened. But stay safe out there all 4th of July weekend. Enjoy it. We'll be back Wednesday. Jake, wrap us up.
I lost power yesterday, by the way. And when it came back on, I have an automatic cat feeder. Mm-hmm. And when it came on, as it beeped, it dispensed 2 extra rounds of food.
Boo's like, boom, jackpot.
Boo was loving it. Hey, everybody, have a great weekend. And then, we will talk to you on Wednesday. For our sake, long weekend. Have a good one.